about that.
Convicted rapist and murderer Tabo Bester has made an impassioned plea for the public to sign a petition for the death sentence to be imposed on him. He told the Free State High Court yesterday that his so-called co-accused know nothing about his alleged escape from prison. The Bester escape saga has been postponed to the 24th of next month for yet another pre-trial hearing. The court gave Bester 7 days to get new legal representative after his lawyer withdrew from the matter.
I request that the public, if they are so convinced, and if the prosecution is so convinced that I am the waste of these people's lives, that this section be enforced on a panel or on a petition, that under the previous Act of Correctional Services, of Criminal Prosecution, Act 126 of 92, that a death sentence be given as a petition, that the public signs a petition, and I will be given a death sentence, and immediately I will agree to it. So we end this matter.
One of the country's largest short-term insurers, Santam, says it has seen an increase in the number of insurance claims from the Eastern Cape following recent floods. The insurer says at this stage it's unable to determine the extent or the cost of the damage. Santam says it has received over 254 claims for damage to property and other assets in the province over the last 48 hours. Santam spokesperson Tabo Bester says more claims from KwaZulu-Natal are anticipated.
We've received just above 250 claims. These are mainly from the Eastern Cape. Our expectation, though, is that we should receive a lot more claims coming in, particularly from the from KZN. Thus far, all of the claims we've received are from the Eastern Cape. When a disaster happens, it usually takes people who've been impacted a day or two to submit claims.
And finally, the African Union Development Agency, NAPAD, says Africa still has a long way to go in achieving its set goals on food security by next year. This as a SADC regional consultation meeting on the 2004 Malabo Declaration gets underway in Lusaka. It seeks to ensure a competitive agriculture sector that will lead to food security in the continent. Head of Agriculture at NAPAD, Dr. Manyewu Mutumba, says the meeting aims to find solutions for future agricultural development.
We still have a long way to go. As a continent, we've set very steep targets for ourselves. And from the work that we've been doing and the support we've been giving to our member states, we recognize that there's still a lot of work to do. And we are already currently looking at how we can proceed in the next 10 years. So as we speak, we are in the process of defining a 10-year strategy for the continent.
Recapping the top story, the Electoral Commission will today officially hand over the lists of members of Parliament and provincial legislatures to the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. This follows Sunday's announcement of the final results of the 2024 general elections. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, soccer action saw Samila in Sudwana strike, securing Richards Bay a vital win against the University of Pretoria. That's in the playoffs. And tennis action, it was Jasmine Paolini who stunned Elena Rybakina to reach her first Grand Slam semi-final at the French Open. All these sports stories and more just before 6:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Here is the top story in Durban. One to avoid. A cash-in-transit heist is what we're hearing. It's on the N2 running northbound. The incident between Queen Nandi Drive and Komashu Highway. The N2 going north is closed. So you've got plenty of options if you need to get up to the airport or you need to get north of Durban. Look at Chris Hani. Look at Mshlanga Rocks Drive. Look at the M4. There are your routes to be taking. There are motorists currently stuck in the N2 north of Queen Nandi Drive, unable to pass that scene. If you're already on the N2, you come off at Umgeni and Nanda Road and hit some alternative routes. We'll keep an eye on that as we go through the morning. It's probably likely to be there for some time. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 6. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this Thursday morning. And, I made the point very early on at the beginning of the week, really, that things are going to go sort of left and right and back and forth with coalition negotiations. I don't know. Is it a bit like a game of ping pong where you never really know where the ball's going to end? It sort of moves around a little bit. What was it? Pinball, rather. People are going to get pushed around and shoved, and there'll be protests, and people are wanting this and people wanting that. It is, let's just be clear, a difficult decision. Okay, it's a difficult decision. So I can't tell you how things are going to end. I don't know if you know how things are going to end. I find it fascinating, though, because it's sort of our politics, it's our entire country, and it's such a rich conversation as well, because there's so many things to it. So for all of those reasons, I think it's really quite interesting. The ANC saying yesterday seemed to be hinting towards a kind of government of national unity. Their spokesperson, holding a briefing yesterday, seemed to be hinting that way. And also confirming that Mkhonto weSizwe has basically blue-ticked them. There's simply no response from MK. MK doesn't seem to be interested in any kind of coalition with the ANC. And I think if you look at the sort of politics of it, the way things are shaping up, that's probably not surprising. And as Velenkosini Klabisa and others have sort of pointed out, MK hasn't yet accepted the results of the elections. And so that becomes quite important. The South African Communist Party saying yesterday they believe the ANC should create a coalition without Mkhonto weSizwe and without the Democratic Alliance. They said that the DA was basically supported by Western forces and was anti-worker, and that MK was factional and was involved in ethnic nationalism. Ethnic nationalism drove it, and you know what that means, don't you? So I thought that was interesting. Of course, that really only leaves the EFF. Now, the EFF and the SACP over the years have not had a great relationship, let's just be clear. So, really not a good relationship between them. So, we'll talk more about it. We'll speak to the SACP a little later. There's been a report widely quoted by Bloomberg of John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, saying that there's sort of room for optimism in a deal, was the way he seems to be putting it. Everyone's being very careful with what they say. And I think this is the kind of point at which we are. It's not entirely surprising that would be the case if you consider how difficult this is actually going to be. There are other developments, and we expect political parties, the National Assembly today, to receive the list of people who will be going to the National Assembly. And everyone will be looking for the name J. Khumalo on the MK list. I don't know how all of that's going to play out. Action SA, Herman Mashaba, and their chair, Michael Bowman, both say that they will not be going to Parliament. They're going to work on building the party. And at face value, that makes sense. But Herman Mashaba was also elected as a councillor in Joburg, and he left the council to work on building the party. So, Herman, we would like to speak to you. Have you decided what you're actually going to do, is my question. Or are you scared of Parliament? Hey, Herman Mashaba? I don't think he's scared of very much, to be fair. But still, you can't have it both ways. You can't leave council and then to say you're going to work for the party and then not go into Parliament either because you're working for the party. I mean, what's going on? Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot that's happening in our politics at the moment, and there's other news around some of the ANC MPs who it seems won't be coming back. Beke Clele, Thandi Modise, I mean, big changes then to the security cluster. They, it seems, won't be coming back. They're not high enough on the list. Lindiwe Zulu, Naledi Pandor as well. Bladen Zamanda is high enough on the list. I don't know if he'll be back in government. It looks like Dina Pule, Malusi Gigaba, Faith Mutambi, high enough to be ANC MPs. I mean, is Malusi Gigaba really going to be an ANC MP again after everything that happened? And I mean, you know, he was found by a court to have lied under oath. So after everything that happened, is he really going to be back there? And Faith Mutambi, you'll remember, of course. The other big story yesterday is around Zizi Kodwa. And he, of course, is was the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture. We spoke to him a few times just before the election, as it happens. He resigned yesterday. He's now been formally charged with corruption. And this case goes all the way back to the Zondo Commission. What happened is that the consultancy EOH, it's changed a lot now, but it was involved in getting government contracts corruptly. And their person, Jahan McKay is his name, he paid 1.6 million rand to Zizi Kodwa. And in return, Kodwa intervened in a tender on behalf of EOH. He sort of basically stopped a tender. And that basically is corruption. I mean, it's the sort of classic case, isn't it? It seems, this is what the Zondo Commission found, that Coda used the money to buy a Jeep. He had problems paying off the Jeep. And so the 1.6 million, or a large portion of it, went to paying off the Jeep. He's resigned. So he resigned very quickly, within sort of an hour of appearing in court. And I don't know what's going to happen next, but it seems to me that maybe, things have changed so much that maybe the idea of being able to resign and come back, later, may be gone. I don't know. But Zizi Coda, I've known him for many years, I must just say. I started reporting on him when he was the spokesperson for the ANC Youth League. So, I've sort of known him for a long time, and this is where we are. Very little coming from MK about what they're planning on doing at this stage. We don't quite know exactly how that's going to play out. There are other stories that are really quite important. There was more flooding in the Western Cape, some of it really quite bad. And of course, it's, it comes after the really bad weather we've seen in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. And Nelson Mandela Bay, still a very difficult situation. Otongati, also very difficult as well. But flooding in the Western Cape over the last 24 hours from the sort of Cape Town to Garden Route area. Some people have had to be evacuated. The car power ships deal, and that's just sort of disappeared, hasn't it? Seems to have just disappeared completely. Well, there were several court cases, and in one of them, the organisation, the Green Connection, had asked NERSA for the documents that nobody would sort of make public. And now a judge has said, yes, Green Connection can have them, but must deal with them discreetly. And what that means is they can't just give them to me. They can't just publish those documents. So Car Powership, I think more information will emerge. And then Tabo Bester was in court yesterday. And he claimed that his lover, Dr. Nandipho Magadumana, should be released and he should receive the death penalty, which just can't happen. And she seemed to be crying, but there were no tears on her face that anyone saw. I don't think we saw any tears. And I must just say, with my older, cynical, slightly grey cap on, that this looked like a sort of show, a little bit of a show. And if you just remember that, despite all of the sort of things that that we see in what Tabo Bester says, he is convicted of murder and rape. We must just not forget that when we deal with this case. So, a tearless cry, if I can call it that. And I'm sorry to be so cynical, but I think in this case we can be. You know how to get in touch with us, 086 000 2032, SMS 41391, tweet SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning. Nice to have you along a Thursday morning. Still no clarity on what's going to happen, but it's the most fascinating thing to watch. It's 6:15.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more, just to be the one who buys your car. We'll come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The clock is on a downhill towards the world's most prestigious games, with a wide variety of exhilarating action such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, football, and many more. The 6th of June marks 50 days to the Olympics. The world's elite athletes are all eyeing a podium finish. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Stephen. How are you doing?
Yeah, all right. I mean, I find
good.
this just the most interesting kind of debate that we're seeing playing out, and I don't know which way it's going to go. There's so many directions it could go as well.
Very true, and you're not the only one. But, today the ANC will be holding its special NEC, and a very crucial one to discuss their various options, to constitute government within the next couple of days. And,
yeah, let's see how it all plays out.
We'll see how it all plays out.
Everyone's going to change their mind 6 times before we finally get there. What else is happening?
Hopefully not. So we will have reaction on that announcement by the ANC that it wants to form a government that will put the interest of the people of the country first, and the ANC saying that it has met with the 6 political parties, that is with a view of forming coalition governments or a government of national unity at national and provincial levels. The SACP, however, not in support of a coalition government that includes the Democratic Alliance, and also So there's a protest today, supposedly by disgruntled ANC members against the party's plans to go into a coalition with the DA. So we will be looking at that. Also, Action SA discussing the way forward following the election outcomes. Leader Herman Mashaba is expected to address a briefing this morning. And AfriForum's private prosecution unit is in possession of Fikile Mbalula's Dubai holiday docket and questions on whether Mbalula has a case to answer. The unit is more convinced that he actually has and says that a significant step has been taken towards privately prosecuting him on charges of corruption. Looking at the trial of a Shoshanguve couple that faked the husband's death, that's expected to resume in the High Court in Pretoria, where Lerato and Sibusiso Mahlangu are facing premeditated murder charges, fraud and defeating the ends of justice. This is for plotting to kill Sibusiso Sitebe, and Sitebe was allegedly killed by his former girlfriend and the mother of his daughter. The Senzo Mehiwa trial also expected to continue this morning following an early adjournment yesterday.
Yep, all busy in the courts. The courts wait for no one. And Musa, thank you very much. You'll be listening on the radio 18 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Still several warnings, I must just tell you, in your weather. A storm surge is expected in the areas from Plettenberg Bay and Buffalo City. There could be some flooding there. Also disruptive rain and localized flooding in the southwestern parts of the Western Cape, and so people very concerned about that, and very cold, wet, windy conditions expected over the Namakwa district in the Northern Cape as well. In Swanet today, fine is the forecast, 4 and 22, Johannesburg fine, 2 and 20, Vereniging fine, 1 and 22, Bombela fine, 12 and 29, Polokwane fine, 4 and 27, Mahakeng fine and windy, 5 and 20, Vryburg fine and windy, becoming cloudy, 2 and 18, Mangaung fine and windy, 1 and 14, Kimberley fine and windy, becoming cloudy in the afternoon, 4 and 14, Uppington fine, becoming partly cloudy and windy, 4 and 14. Cape Town cloudy, widespread showers, a moderate to fresh northerly wind, 8 and 15. George partly cloudy in the morning, otherwise cloudy and windy, isolated showers, a fresh to strong westerly wind, 12 and 16. Gqeberha fine, becoming cloudy, scattered showers, rain from the late afternoon, a light northwesterly wind, strong to gale force westerly winds, 9 and 20. East London fine, becoming partly cloudy from the afternoon, a light to moderate northwesterly wind, 13 and 22. eThekwini fine, a light northwesterly wind, 14 and 24. Richards Bay fine, a light northwesterly, 12 and 27, and Pietermaritzburg fine, 6 and 24.
Here on SAFM, we honor the contribution of the youth for our liberation. The students laid down their lives for the right to equal education. We salute them. Youth Month on SAFM.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
The Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has now said that the Israeli offensive in Gaza will not stop to allow negotiations that could lead to a ceasefire and the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. Yesterday, there were planned meetings with officials from Qatar, Egypt, and the US as part of plans to try and reach some kind of truce to end the fighting. Last week, the US President Joe Biden released a plan to end Israel's offensive in Gaza. So far, there's no agreement. Zinat Adam is the Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Center. Zinat, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. There certainly doesn't seem to be any movement on these discussions.
Well, no, that's the first question. I mean, no one seems to be making any progress at all. We know what people say they want, but it seems that Israel just continues. And while Israel does that, I suppose so does Hamas.
From my view, I think that Biden's announcement on this proposal was a little bit premature, and it's more about Biden and his political standing within the U.S. than it is about what the practicalities are on the ground in Gaza.
So there are other things that are happening. Do we know what Israel is actually trying to do in Rafah at the moment? Is there any kind of military objective that is clear as to what they're trying to do? They say they want to remove Hamas, but that, as everyone has told us, is impossible.
They certainly don't seem to appear to have an exit strategy and don't seem to be willing to engage in these negotiations. This deal that has been placed on the table is not vastly different from the previous versions that we've seen throughout the last few weeks. And particularly with those negotiations that have taken place in Egypt and in Qatar. But we're not seeing any headway coming from the Israeli side. They've been digging their heels in, saying that they want to continue with the hostilities whilst they have the negotiations, whereas Hamas is saying those hostilities need to end. There needs to be a withdrawal of Israeli troops before the final stage negotiations continue. Now, the view by Benjamin Netanyahu to indicate that he would like to destroy Hamas entirely and its capabilities entirely doesn't seem to be very realistic, certainly not from those who understand how things play out on the ground. And in Biden's view, he believes that Hamas has been significantly reduced to a point where they would not be able to conduct an attack similar to that of which we saw on the 7th of October.
But no one saw that coming, so how would they know, I suppose, would be the next question. And so this really goes back again to Netanyahu, who seems determined to continue virtually no matter what the rest of the world thinks.
And it's not just Netanyahu. We have members within the right wing of the Israeli cabinet who are vehement that if he agrees to this negotiation and if he pursues this, that his political career would come to an end. So it's quite a difficult situation that they're facing. Hamas, on the other hand, also stating that despite the fact that they previously agreed to similar proposals, they still want to insist that Israel completely withdraw from the Gaza Strip before any permanent ceasefire negotiations proceed and before any discussions on the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip happen. Meanwhile, we've heard from the Israeli cabinet that they are keen to have the resettlement of Zionists into the Gaza Strip. So there's an absolute impasse, and I don't see how this is going to be resolved simply because Biden has made an announcement on it.
Well, I mean, you would have thought that the United States, being Israel's sort of key ally, that would be significant. Is this maybe showing that Biden has no control at all, is almost powerless when it comes to Netanyahu and Israel? And that surely has consequences too, to be powerless.
It's not just about him being powerless. It's about how he's played this for his American public. And the encampments that have taken place at the universities have applied a significant amount of pressure on the Democrats as they prepare for their elections. But concurrently, what we're seeing is that the United States hasn't halted any of its arms supplies to Israel as they continue their onslaught in Gaza, as they continue the genocide in Gaza. And despite the International Court of Justice ruling that Israel needs to curb this, that hasn't happened. In fact, immediately after that decision, there's been an increase in terms of Israeli onslaught into Gaza and into Rafah. And we don't see this letting up. In fact, what we're finding is that the aid trucks have been prevented from going in. We're seeing an increase across the border in their fighting with Lebanon also reach an increase. And the war just doesn't seem to be reaching a stage where these hostilities will come to an end.
So this will obviously then, unfortunately, continue for quite some time. And it's still because Israel has the military power. There's still no sign. And I keep going back, to at the very beginning of this conflict, a professor of military strategy pointing out that Israel should not go into Gaza unless it had a very clear objective. And that is still the case. It does not have a clear, achievable objective. And that's one of the things that really underscores this.
Their objective seems to be destroy the military and governing capabilities, and that's a quotation from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But what constitutes destruction of Hamas's capabilities? Their initial entry into the Gaza Strip was on the premise of releasing the hostages. The hostage negotiations have led nowhere since November. There was a partial release of hostages, and they haven't pursued that since then. The Israeli families of the hostages have been insistent that these negotiations take place, and yet the Israeli War Cabinet has been persistent in their idea that they want this war to continue.
Zinat Adam, thank you. Executive Director at the Afro Middle East Centre. Do appreciate it. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Richards Bay, strong day for them yesterday.
Oh, absolutely. They gave Tuks a real wake-up call with a stunner. Playoff drama at its finest. They scored a winner 1-0 in the opening of the promotion relegation playoffs. Now it was Somila Insudwana who scored the stunner in the 22nd minute at King Zwelithini Stadium in Umlazi, Durban. Tuks came into the match on top of the table after winning 1-0 in the playoffs' first encounter against their Motsepe Foundation Championship counterparts Baroka FC in Pretoria. That was on Sunday. Richards Bay finished 15th in the Premiership and will retain their position in the top flight if they can finish on top of the log in the playoff against Tuks and Baroka, who finished second and third respectively. In the World Cup qualifiers, Tunisia claimed a 1-0 victory against Equatorial Guinea as Africa's 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers resumed with 5 matches across the continent last night. It was the Carthage Eagles' third win from as many matches in Group H and saw them open a 2-point lead at the top of the standings. Sierra Leone secured their first win in Group A, defeating Minnows Djibouti 2-1 in El Jadida. And the Central African Republic had some achievement in Group 1 as they ed Chad 1-0 in Oujda. In the other encounters, Namibia and Liberia shared the spoils in Johannesburg, drawing 1-1 in their Group H match, while Togo were held 1-1 in Lome by Group B rivals Liberia. The World Cup qualifiers will continue today with 9 matches across the continent, headlined by Algeria hosting Guinea, a West African derby between Mali and Ghana in Bamako, and a potential thriller between Senegal and DR Congo. Elsewhere, Premier League clubs are unlikely to vote through Wolves' proposal to scrap the use of video assistant referee when member clubs meet at an annual general meeting today, but in-game VAR announcements are set to be introduced. Wolves formally submitted a resolution to the Premier League, which triggered a vote on retaining the use of VAR. Tennis action. Jasmine Paolini stunned Elena Rybakina in a back-and-forth contest to reach her first Grand Slam semi-final at the French Open. Paolini will take on the 17-year-old Mira Andreeva in the final. Andreeva beat Arina Sabalenka. Here's Paolini.
The singles was a really tough match. I'm happy I managed to come back in the third set because, was tough after the second set. But, yeah, I'm really happy with my performance. With Mira, it's going to be a tough match. I played against her in Madrid, and she's really great player. I think she's so young, but she's so good mentally, and she can defend very well.
We'll have more sport for you on Sunrise. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning, you're with SFM leading the conversation. We'll hear from the Public Protector in the next half hour. She's been looking at how victims of gender-based violence are treated by our legal system. It's just gone 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the ANC will hold its crucial special NEC meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, later this morning to discuss various options to constitute government within the next 2 weeks. Some party members say the ANC-DA marriage is the best option for the country's stability, while others, including alliance partners COSATU and the SACP, have strongly rejected the deal. The Electoral Commission will today officially hand over the lists of members of Parliament and provincial legislatures to the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. This follows Sunday's announcement of the final results of the 2024 general elections. And at least 150 people are feared dead in a massacre in central Sudan carried out by the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Durban's N2 going north is closed at the Queen Drive exit. It's a cash-in transit heist on the highway this morning. This is going to run for some time, and we'll probably still be talking about it come lunchtime, maybe even late into the afternoon. So the N2 towards the airport closed, Queen through to Kumashu Highway. Big queues on the N2 approaching that closure point. You've got plenty of options to avoid it. You could come off the N2 at Umgeni and Nanda Road, either work up through Kumashu or cut back on Umgeni Road and get onto Chris Hani. So Chris Mutani becomes an option up to the N2. Musabala Yengwa onto Mshlanga Rocks, up towards Mshlanga Rocks Drive. That becomes an option. And the M4, the Route First Highway out of Durban. So you've got plenty of options to avoid it. And really, you should be. Also, big backlogs coming from Kwamashu southbound down towards Queen Nandi Drive into that area as well. Just away from that, a collision on Pretoria's Mabopani Highway at Bremer Street. Very heavy queues this morning from Theo Martins. It's a busy route, one of the busiest around the country. So the R80 in the Pretoria backed heavily in towards that scene. Cape Town still raining. Wet weather conditions with us probably until some point tomorrow morning. Chapman's Peak Drive is closed due to the adverse weather conditions, and the highways are all getting fairly busy. Make sure you've got time to get through and get through safely. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intel Englachela, good morning. How are you doing?
Morning, Stephen. I'm well, thanks. I hope you're good.
All good. How are the markets looking?
So risk assets are back in vogue, with U.S. markets closing yesterday in positive territory, making gains as sentiment turns positive. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite ended at records as Nvidia's market cap topped the $3 trillion mark for the first time. Now in Asia, those markets mostly in the green amid increased optimism over lower interest rates across the globe, with a cut expected from the European Central Bank today. At home, trading quite muted with no changes in the all share. A bright spark, however, was the Resources 10 complex, ending the day 1.8% higher. Moving over to the currency scene, the rand remains volatile, extending its losses and edging closer to that 19 rand mark to the dollar. It's currently sitting at 18.91 to the greenback.
And then Nvidia becomes the world's second most valuable listed company. I mean, it's been kind of moving this way, hasn't it?
Right, it's well expected. Nvidia's value surged past that $3 trillion mark yesterday, making it the world's second most valuable listed company, overtaking Apple. Now, it snapped up this position after a rapid climb that started last year, powered by bets that the firm is positioned to be a major winner from a wave of investment in artificial intelligence. Now, its market value sits just behind Microsoft, another key player in that industry thanks to its investment in OpenAI. Now, the chip maker Nvidia was valued at $2 trillion in February, and the market value started climbing as it sparked a new wave of share purchases after it announced plans last month for a so-called stock split. That move will increase the number of shares by a factor of 10 and reduce their value accordingly. Now, this change is aimed at making shares more affordable to small-time investors, which seemed to appease markets.
And then the high interest rate environment, that's weighing on 91.
That's right, Stephen. Now, this environment has depressed the appetite for investment in emerging markets. So during the annual period, 91 noted that equity market performances were narrow for the first part of the year, with the group's clients favoring more passive equity investments over active investments in developed markets. Now, this resulted in significant outflows from developing markets, as those markets were tougher to navigate, and it also saw its assets under management fall 8%. 91 has warned that conditions will remain tough for some time, particularly in South Africa, as the country's government transitions into a coalition.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Thanks very much indeed. Intel Englachela back with us in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Africa to the listeners.
Russia is going to send more military supplies and instructors to Burkina Faso.
Stephen, remember that the Foreign Affairs Minister, Sergei Lavrov, is in Ouagadougou. He met with Captain Ibrahim Traore, who they've agreed on this military cooperation, providing also military training of instructors for Ouagadougou to start to have what they call defense capabilities and fight terrorism. Interestingly, we know that this visit is also within the Sahel region, Mali, Niger, Chad. There's been the visit of Moscow lately, Stephen, but it's to strengthen the relationship between Russia and Burkina Faso since Traore was in the Africa-Russia summit in 2023.
And the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, he's told his minister to create a new minimum wage.
Stephen, that says to say, he says to his Minister of Finance that he met yesterday to say that the Minister of Finance must now go to the numbers, Stephen, must do numerical stats now in terms of increasing this new minimum wage in Nigeria, in Abuja, particularly Stephen is saying he's given him 48 hours to look at that process, but balancing it with the current realities that he have said, that they have to look at that. Others are saying it should be 60,000 naira that should be increased to the workers in Nigeria. So we are expecting, Stephen, by almost Friday or next week Monday, that there is an agreement between the trade union in Nigeria with this current crisis that is going on with the labor strike going on in the capital city of Abuja and Lagos.
And then in the DRC and Benin, at least 16 people killed by a suspected Islamist rebel group.
Stephen, this is very sad because since 1994, the allied forces that are aligned to the Islamic State started as a Ugandan insurgency. It's been operating there, Stephen. They've killed people mercilessly using the machetes of the Rwanda genocide. It still reminds us of what happened in Rwanda. But 16 people have been killed in the north part of Kivu, that is in the eastern part between Rwanda, Goma, Burundi, as well as Tanzania. So this is worrying, Stephen, when you look that people are being killed, and we have a SACP mission that is in the DRC. We have the UN, MONUSCO, that is facing out of that region of Beni in the DRC.
And then the president of Cape Verde, José Maria Neves, says the rise of right-wing populism is making it difficult to have proper discussions about colonial reparations.
And Stephen, he's raising this based on the visit that was done by the president of Portugal, Marcelo Rebelo, when he visited most of the countries, and raising the issue of the transatlantic slavery and the colonial era. Now, the president of Cape Verde, Maria Neves, is raising the issue that maybe, Stephen, they should have this conversation behind the closed doors because it is raising a lot of issues. But at the same time, it should not be something that those who are colonized, they should not raise it. Remember, Portugal colonized Angola, Mozambique, Brazil, Cape Verde, Sao Tome as well was being colonized by Portugal. So I think Neves is raising something that has not been spoken in the African continent, but they are speaking about it as Cabo Verde now.
And then in our archives, this day, 6th of June, 1995.
Stephen, it's almost 29 years. For our law students who are listening, law lecturers, they will remember the state versus T. Makwenyan and M. Mchunu, where it abolishes the death penalty and guarantees the right to life as enshrined by Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights. Very important, Stephen, looking at that, this section was repealing one of the Criminal Procedure Act that many judges during that time, I still recall Justice Mokgoro was one of the leading justices on the state versus Makwanyane case in 1994, and it was delivered on this day, on the 6th of June, 1995. Asante sana, it was still leading the conversation, SAFM, observing the Youth Month.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you so much. Back, of course, tomorrow morning is from our continent through the day here on SAFM, 20 minutes to 7.
The National Pulse on SAFM.
And I take it the revote or recount, if it does happen at any level, right, it can't affect the overall result of the election, right?
Totally. The number of experts who understand numbers and electoral processes suggest that even if there's a recount or revoting, it's not necessarily going to change the outcomes of the results in terms of magnitude, differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's likely to end up being the same situation that we have. And should it happen, I think South Africa has got mechanisms in place to be able to deal with that circumstance. But the way the numbers look now, Ashraf and listeners at home, it really suggests that it may not necessarily shift the situation differently.
Dr. Rafikile Vilagazi, who is a political analyst based at the University of the Western Cape.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
19 minutes to 7. Good morning. The Public Protector Advocate Kaleka has found that victims of gender-based violence, so in the main women who are attacked by men, are being failed by the system when they go to court. The report says the Department of Justice, the Department of Social Development and the SAPS are not providing proper support to women. This investigation started after a woman called Altisha Korki went to the Belleville Magistrates Court. She wanted a protection order. She was turned away, and then both she and her daughter were then found murdered. The Justice Department, after that, asked the Public Protector to investigate. Well, the Public Protector, Advocate Kaleka, is on the line for you now. Madam Public Protector, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the SAFM listeners, and thank you for having me on the show.
What did you find? How are our courts and our police service failing these victims of gender-based violence? And this was specifically magistrates' courts.
we found that indeed there were serious deficiencies in the manner in which matters of gender-based violence were being dealt with. And from what you've just introduced on the murder of Ms. Kortja and her daughter, it is really, taking from that particular case, which we had done and closed on the basis that there were really no adverse actions from the parts of the personnel of the Department of Justice. However, there were systemic issues, and first of all, such as the forms, the GBV forms that these victims are supposed to complete when they arrive at court, the psychosocial-emotional support that they receive, but also the support that they receive in terms of understanding these particular forms. Because in that matter, we actually found that Ms. Korja was just given a form, explained to that she needs to complete it and bring it back to court, but her psychosocial-emotional state was never assessed. She was let to go home with that particular form, which she found very tedious to complete. So that was really our starting point, and our findings are in line with that. But also the infrastructure and the environment within which these matters are being attended to, and also the environment under which the officials of justice work. But there are systems issues. The integrated case management system of justice, which is not operational, but also compliance with the Domestic Violence Act and other regulations under which they function. And this really extends also to the Department of Social Development, as well as to the South African Police Service, which are an integral part of the criminal justice system in dealing with matters of gender-based violence, but also looking into their own cooperation and interrelatedness with the Constitution, which we found does not exist.
So, I mean, we keep being told that government and that officials are trying to help victims of gender-based violence. From what you say, and from this case, and I presume there are many, many more Altisha Kortjas out there, people are not getting the help that they need. Now, I realize that all of this is happening in a case of limited resources. If you go to a magistrate's court, I'm sure you'll see that. Is it also because the officials there, for various reasons, aren't interested in helping people? And I imagine to be an official there is actually a very difficult job, not an easy job at all. But are people just going there and basically finding no help at all?
Not at all, Stephen. For instance, when I visited the Bellville Magistrates Court, which is one of 38 courts visited by the personnel at the Public Protector Office, I actually found that the officials were doing a lot to improvise within the limited resources they function under to ensure that they assist victims of gender-based violence. But there's a multifaceted of issues. For instance, training of officials on a constant basis. Their own psycho-emotional support, because dealing with gender-based violence matters is quite taxing psychologically, but also other forms of support that they should be getting from the department itself to ensure that they are able to effectively and efficiently deal with their matters. So there is a number of issues, but also, dealing with GBV matters requires not just the skill, but it also requires a lot of passion and will to deal with these matters and constant debriefing. So it is a number of issues that we picked up that actually contribute to the deficit of the manner in which these cases are being dealt with.
Your office has the power, as I understand it, to make binding recommendations. What recommendations or remedial action are you asking the department to implement to make this better?
Indeed, the binding remedial actions which we've taken is that first and foremost, they need to ensure that the integrated case management system, which has been budgeted for over years and has been non-functional, begins to function, and that they do the work and report to us within 210 days. The implementation on the functionality of that system, and secondly, to ensure that the finding and the archiving and processing of domestic violence cases happens in line with the regulations of archiving of these particular matters, the training of their personnel. And also part of it is also to ensure that there is adherence to Section 41, because departments can't work in isolation in dealing with these matters. And the same goes for the police, ensuring that they've got proper infrastructure, victim-friendly rooms in order to ensure that these victims are protected and secured and that they feel safe and they are dealt with in a manner in which their psycho-emotional state can tolerate. So there's a lot of environmental issues that need to be put in place. And also the Department of Social Development rather, to ensure that they are integrated within the system and render the social support that they are supposed to render. But I think what is critical is that there is some progress made in our country. I mean, even before we finalized this report, having started with our engagement with the Department of Justice, they took forward the amendment of the Domestic Violence Act, and now through work that had been continuing anyway, the finalization of the Femicide Bill. We, however, feel that in order to implement these progressive legislations, including our constitution, there's a lot of infrastructural inform and also in measure of implementation of these and increasing the capacity of those who are dealing with gender-based violence matters.
Public Protector, thank you very much indeed. Advocate Kaleka, the Public Protector, on SAFM this morning. Ma'am, thank you. 12 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Going to be a chaotic day in Durban today with a cash in transit heist early hours this morning. Well, not that early, actually, about just after 5 a.m. It's closed the N2 between Queen Andy Drive and the Kumashu Highway. Northbound is fully closed. Big backlogs after the Umgeni and Nunda Road up towards Queen Andy Drive, whereas the enforced off-ramps there for a trip up through Kumashu or a backtrack down towards Chris Hani. You've got plenty of options to avoid it. If you're on the N2 going up towards the airport, come off and don't go any further than Umgeni and in Nunda Road. You can cut out through Sianda and Kumashu that side. You can come back through Springfield or Sika Lake and hook it to Chris Hani. You can use Masabalali Yangwa, Slunger Rocks Drive, and you can also use the M4. So lots of options to avoid the N2 North, which is closed. The N2 South coming down from Kumashu towards Queen Andy Drive. Very heavy backlogs because of the activity on the northbound side as well. Just away from that, we've got some pressure on the Mopani Highway to Pretoria. Crash at Bremer Street. Very heavy backlogs right through Theo Martins and almost back towards the N4 highway. Looks like an issue bottom end of the N1. That's queuing from Allendale down towards Buccleuch interchange this morning. And Cape Town, the N1 a little bit heavier than you might be expecting. It sort of queues up from Plattekloof Hill all the way through to the elevated freeway in the city centre. Normally this time of morning you're queuing to Sable Road, Kubo interchange, but it goes right through to town today. And the M5 under pressure through the rain from Ottery right through to Maitland and into that Kubo interchange. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Are you ready to empower yourself with an accredited tertiary qualification? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning programs will set you up for success. Whether you're balancing work and family or you're a school leaver who must work to support yourself and your studies, Stadio offers access to high-quality, affordable qualifications in law, teacher education, commerce, admin and management, policing, and more. Mid-year applications are now open. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing Storms River, free-falling over Plet having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30. Repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
9 minutes to 7. So many issues at the moment, many of them around coalitions, but also the conversation we've been having around gender-based violence. Hassan in Joburg. Hi, good morning.
Hi. I wanted to take the opportunity to link gender-based violence to the murder of Alima Preston in Durban. She was killed by, apparently, all images show, and he was in court on the 4th of June, a person whose motivations appear to be racist, broken in the night and apparently also threatened the young daughter with rape.
This is
the Guardian article.
Yes.
The bear.
Yes, this is the case in Durban, eThekwini.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
And I've seen statements from other organizations asking for calm, and because it is somehow linked to her activism or support for Palestine. Now, I do think that we're not talking enough about it, and I don't want to do whataboutism to say if it was someone else, how it should have been. I just would like to have a little bit more regular coverage about it, because the threats to rape has gone only in the Mail and Guardian it was covered, but not really more widely.
So, Hassan, I mean, I haven't followed it very closely. I'm aware of it, and my understanding of it and the reports that I've seen is that this person broke into the house, claimed that he was doing this because the people were supporting Palestine. I think he's also been sent for psychiatric evaluation, though. And so we have so many crimes that the motivation sometimes becomes the story, but we don't yet know what that evaluation will bring us. And I think that's one of the reasons I sort of want to see what that does, if you know what I mean. But I mean, you're absolutely correct, of course.
Yeah. Now, I've heard of the types of illnesses that he was associated with, and according to a statement yesterday purporting to come from the family put out by the Muslim Association, that some of them are drug-related, etc., and apparently look quite curable. The kind of things I'm concerned about is that this appears to be the kind of hate, the sickness of hate, that resembles what happened in the United States, where someone whom they knew killed a young kid. So that's what I want us to keep an eye on.
No, sure. Okay. All right. No, Hassan, thank you. It's an important story. I appreciate that. 7 minutes to 7.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
The former Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, Zizi Kodwa, resigning from his position yesterday, just an hour after appearing in court and being formally charged with corruption, along with the businessman, Jahan McKay. McKay is accused of facilitating a 1.6 million rand payment for Kodwa from the company EOH. In return, Kodwa was accused of intervening in a government tender. EOH said to the Zondo Commission that its people who were running it at the time had been involved in wrongdoing and has completely changed. Now, the Zondo Commission did accept that. Karam Singh is the Executive Director at Corruption Watch. Karam, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to all the listeners.
Look, we haven't seen things move quite so fast in quite a while. Zizi Kodwa appearing in court, resigning literally immediately after being charged. That must be in some level good for accountability.
Yes, I think we can generally say that what transpired, particularly in terms of the step aside and the immediate resignation, is what we would expect to see in these circumstances. And I think, by all means, that's a positive development.
What I don't understand is this case has taken so long. So the Zondo Commission heard the evidence. I realize they can't use the evidence in the case, but it made findings. That was 2 years ago. It's taken 2 years to get to this point. And if I recall, the Zondo Commission actually said that President Cyril Ramaphosa should sort of consider Kodwa's position, which is really code for he should be removed. Is the delay a problem? A full 2 years or so later?
I think the delay in terms of the inaction by the executive, given the information that was before it, in terms of asking Mr. Kodwa to step aside while the investigation proceeded, is absolutely problematic. The MPA is getting its house in order. These are complex cases. The MPA doesn't want to enroll a case and then have a situation like it had in the Machele Coco case, where the case then gets withdrawn because they don't have their ducks in a row. So in terms of the NPA processes, I think these things do take time. We'd like to see them move more quickly, obviously. But as you said, they couldn't just take the Zondo findings and go to court with them. They needed to ensure that they had the right evidentiary docket in place to be able to pursue the criminal case. And obviously that took some time.
Do you believe the NPA might be close to bringing other cases? I mean, Shamila Batohi is on record as saying that her big disappointment is that she hasn't brought big state capture cases. We all saw the Zondo Commission. Do you think other cases might come soon?
I mean, that's obviously our expectation, but I mean, we with bated breath, we anticipate these things. There's two now extremely significant cases that have come on the roll in terms of the speaker and in terms of Mr. Kodwa. I think there were a number of cases emanating from the Zondo Commission where the finding was further investigations are required in order to pursue the criminal case. So I think it is our expectation that within this year, within years to come, we will see additional high-profile cases emanating from the facts, that the Zondo Commission looked at.
I mean, the delay in this case actually had a political consequence because Zizi Kodwa was on the ANC's list to go to Parliament. He's obviously not any longer. And that may or may not have cost the ANC votes, I don't know. But my point is the delay matters. A delay has consequences.
No, absolutely, Stephen. Whenever we don't have a seamless a criminal justice system, where we move swiftly from allegation to investigation to prosecution. So this is what we need to see going forward if we're going to make any progress in the fight against corruption. We need these processes to unfold in a much more seamless way without these kind of delays, because as you say, there are implications when you have high-profile people with these kinds of allegations over their heads who remain in their positions. It's not good governance, and it doesn't bode well for the state of democratic governance.
Karam Singh, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate Executive Director at Corruption Watch. You with SAFM. Ninja on the line from Durban. Ninja, hi. You want to talk about ethics, crime, and corruption? Go for it.
Yeah, first and foremost, the ANC. I want to talk about the ANC Bermuda Triangle.
Yes.
Now, yeah. You see, you got the ANC hierarchy. You got Mr. Zuma, and you got Mr. Malema. Now, Mr. Malema and Mr. Zuma have an agenda each in the process of destabilization. They need to sort this out before they run the country. I don't think the ANC is fit to run the country given the high-profile corruption. And I think the Ethics Committee need to investigate each MP, what offshore accounts they have, what Swiss bank accounts they have, because Africa has gone down this route. And Zuma made a point about the president, that he's aligned himself with a capitalist monopoly. And that's true to a point. The ANC is simply piggybacking on previous capitalism. And this is where they can't fall short. They can't deal with the day-to-day issues of people. Now they're talking about setting up infrastructure. What have they done for 30 years? So, politics aside, you take the colonial era of Britain and the Nationalist Party, all said and done, they spent billions setting up this infrastructure, which the ANC is simply piggybacking. Look at the people in the remote areas. They got nothing. They're entrapped in poverty. They can't set up anything for them,
Yeah.
And the point is, they've created a dependency culture, and this is disastrous for this country. And I don't think the NHI is going to work because they're not getting enough revenue because of the syndicate crime within these institutions. The same thing is happening in DRC. They've got the army there.
Okay.
The same thing is happening here. How come they don't have the army on the streets here to sort this out? They can't sort this problem. They're sorting the problem out there.
All right, Ninja, thank you. Yeah, I mean, look, interesting points to it. And I mean, there's a lot going on around our politics at the moment. You were there, SAFM, leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock. Our insurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, ANC-NEC meeting to pave the way forward for new administration, and IEC to hand over lists of members of parliament and provincial legislatures. Good morning. The ANC will hold its crucial Special National Executive Committee meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, later this morning to discuss various options to constitute government within the next 2 weeks. Some party members say a ANC-DA coalition is the best option for the country's stability, while others, including alliance partners COSATU and the SACP, have strongly rejected the deal. Ntebo Mukobo reports.
After a marathon talks at the top officials level in their National Working Committee, ANC spokesperson Mahlengi Bengu Mutsiri says they are now looking at the idea of forming a government of national unity or a minority government. She says they've met with the DA, the EFF, the IFP, the NFP and the PA, with the MK party not giving them a hearing.
The ANC has repeatedly reached out to the MK with no positive response. Our door remains open as we continue to reach out to every party.
But she says there is also a fear about some of the permutations, with some NEC members and alliance partners not happy with a possible DA coalition arrangement.
The Electoral Commission will today officially hand over the lists of members of Parliament and provincial legislatures to the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. This follows Sunday's announcement of the final results of the 2024 general elections. The Chief Justice will then hand the lists over to the Secretary to Parliament. This ceremonial handover takes place in preparation for the first sitting of the National Assembly. It takes place 14 days after the declaration of the results. Zondo is the only authority that can determine and gazette the date for the sitting. The Chief Justice will also share the lists of designated members of the provincial legislatures with the designated judges president who will preside over the first sitting of the provincial legislatures. Convicted rapist and murderer Tabo Bester has made an impassioned plea for the public to sign a petition for the death sentence to be imposed on him. This is to demonstrate his conviction that his co-accused are not part of his escape plot. He told the Free State High Court yesterday that he is being treated inhumanely in prison. The Bester escape saga has been postponed to the 24th of next month for yet another pre-trial hearing. The court gave Bester 7 days to get a new legal representative after his lawyer withdrew from the matter.
I request that the public, if they are so convinced, and if the prosecution is so convinced that I am the waste of these people's lives, that this section be enforced on a panel or on a petition, that under the previous Act of Correctional Services, of Criminal Prosecution, Act 126 of 92, that a death sentence be given as a petition, that the public signs a petition, and I be given a death sentence, and immediately I will agree to it. So we end this matter.
The Tongaat Muslim Society says it's closely working with people who are affected by the storms in the north of Durban to provide accommodation, food and clothes. The storm left hundreds of residents destitute as their homes were destroyed and damaged. The chairperson of the society, Jamil Khan, says they want to help those affected at this difficult time.
At the time of this incident, we housed these people. Whoever wanted to have shelter for the night, we helped them. We gave them hot teas and cakes and that because it was too late for us to prepare a proper meal. And we kept them here the whole night, although we didn't have the proper facility for them in terms of mattresses and that. And then the next morning we fed them, we had them breakfast for them. We had lunch throughout the day.
One of the country's largest short-term insurers, Santam, says it has seen an increase in the number of insurance claims from the Eastern Cape following recent floods. The insurer says at this stage it is unable to determine the extent or the cost of the damage. Santam says it has received over 254 claims for damage to property and other assets in the province over the last 48 hours. The spokesperson, Tabo Mabaso, says more claims from KwaZulu-Natal are anticipated. estimated.
We've received just above 250 claims. These are mainly from the Eastern Cape. Our expectation, though, is that we should receive a lot more claims coming in, particularly from the from KZN. Thus far, all of the claims we've received are from the Eastern Cape. When a disaster happens, it usually takes people who've been impacted a day or two to submit claims.
And finally, at least 150 people are feared dead in a massacre in central Sudan carried out by the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary. Footage on social media showed dozens of bodies prepared for burial in the village of Wad al-Nur in Jazeera State. The BBC's Muhammad Hashim reports.
Local activists say the RSF surrounded the village early on Wednesday before their deadly assault, which forced women and children to flee. Footage shows residents standing before dozens of bodies covered in shrouds ready for burial. Since the RSF captured Jazeera State in late December last year, it has been accused of perpetrating widespread atrocities. The RSF has been fighting the Sudanese army since April 2023 in a civil war that has engulfed the country.
Recapping the top story, the ANC will hold its crucial Special National Executive Committee meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, later this morning to discuss various options to constitute government within the next 2 weeks. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And thank you. Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out. 37-year-old Tabo got a really great deal on his car insurance premium from Outsurance. He pays an amazing R762 per month to insure his white 2018 Ford Figo Ambiente. He now has extra cash every month to go out for a meal with his friends. Get an Outsurance quote today. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 now. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer. Bafana's Ikram Reyners is eager to face Nigeria in the World Cup qualifiers. And in cricket, India's pace attack dominating Ireland in the T20 World Cup opener, securing an 8-wicket victory. All these sports stories and more just before 7:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Important note for anyone that uses Marlborough Drive in Joburg between the Mike 1 Highway and the N3. Protesters again this morning at Marlborough Gardens down by Zinnia Road. We saw it last night, burning tyres on the roads around about sort of 6:30, 7 p.m. We feared they may come back this morning, and they are. So Marlborough Drive effectively closed. If you normally come off the N3, you can expect a big backlog. If you normally head out of Santon towards the N3, you can expect a big backlog. Just avoid Marlborough Drive. Crash on the M1 south of Buccleuch, so heavy pressure, almost backing up as far as New Road this morning. Durban's N2 North closure through Queen Nandi towards Kwamashu Highway due to a cash in transit heist. That'll probably be closed for some time today. There's terrific pressure in the area. Just stay off the N2 North, effectively north of Spaghetti Junction. You'll hit some big trouble there. And Cape Town, very heavy on all the highways. The N1 particularly worth a shout this morning. It's backing up from Plattekloof Hill all the way through to the elevated freeway. A lot worse than normal. Massive cruise ship in town with its sort of lights on this morning. That plus the wet weather conditions. Bit of onlooking, bit of slowness because of the weather, and that N1 really under pressure. Into that, the M5 queues from Ottery all the way through to the N1 Kuba. Get a change. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7:09, good morning. You're with SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes as well. A lot to come in the next little while. Still no clarity on what's going to happen with our coalitions and how it's all going to work. We heard yesterday from 2 long-term members of the ANC. We thought we would hear today from a long-term member of the Democratic Alliance, Douglas Gibson. He'll be on your radio in a little while. We'll also hear from Professor Adam Habib. He's been following the story, in a way, the South African story, for many, many years. And he thought that he would have an interesting view. A little later in the show, the South African Communist Party, they've agreed to speak to you at 7:40. They said yesterday they don't want the ANC to work with either Umkhonto we Sizwe or the Democratic Alliance. We'll hear from them their views on that. Your mediated conversation, Stuns' idea actually, is about cricket. And I say this because cricket is trying to conquer the United States. The T20 Cricket World Cup is underway there. We've just had the IPL. But what is happening to Test cricket? You know, the 5-day game. Some people call that real cricket. The big dispute within cricket about all of that. That conversation on your radio from 8:30. Good morning, 7:10.
Channel the best father you can be on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3. As psychologist Clint Maggott offers effective coping strategies for men's mental health. Get tips on saving and investing for your child's education. And hear how Dr. Anza Chipetane shapes bright young leaders. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Bakaka are searching for their first victory to cement their plan of returning to the rooftop of Ibhola laseMzansi. Yet, the Natal Rich Boys believe that tears of joy belong to them. This is the Premier Soccer League promotional playoffs. Catch Baroka FC versus Richards Bay FC this Saturday, 8 June at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
12 after 7, good morning. Well, still no clarity this morning on who the ANC will work with to form a government after last week's election results where the ANC fell to just 40% of the vote. Yesterday, the party said after its National Working Committee meeting that it was speaking to many different parties. The ANC appeared to be hinting at some kind of government of national unity, also confirming Umkhonto we Sizwe does not appear interested in working with the ANC. The ANC says it hasn't received a response from MK. Meanwhile, the South African Communist Party says it believes the ANC needs to avoid working both with the DA and MK. It says the DA represents neoliberalism and is funded by the West, while MK is a party based on ethno-nationalism. Yesterday, here on SFM, you heard from two long-term members of the ANC. Cheryl Carolus said the ANC needed to work with the DA because they're the two biggest parties after the election. Matthews Pauser had a very different view. He said if the ANC worked with the DA, it could kiss the local elections in 18 months goodbye. Well, those are what some of the long-term members of the ANC say. Let's hear from a long-term member of the Democratic Alliance. Douglas Gibson is a former chief whip of the DA, of the opposition in Parliament, and a former ambassador to Thailand. Douglas, good morning. It's been many years. Thank you for agreeing to speak to us this morning.
Yes, good morning to you, Stephen, and to your listeners. It's a pleasure being on your program.
You'll be following this debate pretty closely, I'm sure. Should the Democratic Alliance, the party you worked for a very long time, should it work with the ANC in this moment?
The DA made it clear during the election that what we were going to do is everything in our power to prevent some sort of a coalition or a working arrangement between MK, EFF, and the ANC. We called that a coalition of doom, and I think that's exactly what it is. If the priority of South Africa is growth, investment, and jobs for 7 million people, and however many million young people who are sitting hopelessly at home with no job and no prospects, if that's the priority of South Africa, then the ANC and the DA should work together.
Doesn't it affect the DA what happens? If the DA works with the ANC, the DA, you will remember it. You were one of the people who started it in a way. The whole point was to work against the ANC, criticize the ANC, fight back, all of these things. It goes back many years. Won't some of your supporters feel that you're betraying them if you keep the ANC in power? Wouldn't that be a consequence?
The DA has made it clear that what counts is the interests of the country before the interests of political parties and politicians. So I think that if it becomes a possibility, the DA will probably do it. But I must make it clear, I'm not in the negotiating team, and what I'm saying now doesn't necessarily represent either the DA's view or the leader's view. It's my view.
No, sure. Well, that's why we asked you on. It seems that the DA offer, which is basically to keep the ANC in power, to keep the president in power, and I'm sure Cyril Ramaphosa is a sort of key figure for the DA in this in some way, is really aimed at selling the deal, that the DA would not actually ask for a cabinet position, just wants the position of speaker in the National Assembly, maybe both speakerships, I'm not sure, and sort of chairing certain committees, the sort of confidence and supply deal. Is that a deal aimed at selling it, basically saying to the ANC, you can keep almost all of the power, and that also prevents the DA from being harmed by anything that could happen in government. Is it a deal designed to sell?
I think that is one of the most likely scenarios, better than perhaps a straight coalition where we become co-responsible for all the mess that they make. A confidence and supply agreement, the sort of thing that they have in Canada and many other countries in the world where you have a proportional representation system. And all it means really is that one undertakes not to support a vote of no confidence and to vote in favor of the budget, provided that one's been able to give input and it's been listened to. And so it's not about positions for the DA or its members. It's about having a minority government that can be stable. And I think that would be the best. It would be the biggest check on the ANC that they've ever had, because all the silly legislation, mad legislation, unfortunate legislation that they rush through Parliament would probably not be able to be put through in the next 5 years. So it becomes quite an attractive option.
Douglas Gibson, thank you very much indeed. Former opposition chief whip, a former ambassador to Thailand as well, and of course a long-term member of the Democratic Alliance. 17 after 7, listening to that, Professor Adam Habib, currently Vice-Chancellor at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London, someone who's been watching, studying our politics for many, many years. Professor Habib, good morning. I mean, it seems to me at the moment that the ANC is going a little bit of back and forth, or maybe left and right and back again is a better description. Do you think the leaders of the ANC have a clear idea yet of what's really the best option for them? Right, we seem to have lost Professor Adam Habib on that link there. He is out of the country, so we were expecting to hear from him on this particular issue. And as you know, of course, it's interesting to get different views and different analysis on this particular issue. You were there, SAFM, 18 minutes after 7.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing storms river, free-falling over Plet having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30, repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
The clock is on a downhill towards the world's most prestigious games, with a wide variety of exhilarating action such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, football, and many more. The 6th of June marks 50 days to the Olympics. The world's elite athletes are all eyeing a podium finish. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Professor Adam Habib with us now. Professor Habib, sorry about that. I was making the point, it seems at the moment the ANC is going a little bit of back and forth or left and right and back again. Do you think its leadership at this stage has a clear idea of what the best option for the party actually is?
I think that the leadership is in crisis. I think they're very, very heavily divided, Stephen. And I think that that has largely to do with different factions with the ANC having different ideas about how the party should proceed. I think on the one hand, there are people, perhaps around the president, perhaps around the Minister of Finance, who are of the view that a more stable economic growth position would be an alliance with somebody like the DA and allied parties. I think that there are other factions that are horrified about the prospect and would rather have partnerships with MK and the EFF, and they are prepared to sacrifice growth, economic inclusion and related issues because they see the DA as a deeply traditional white party and not representative of black interests.
There's so much about race in this. I mean, it's about our history. I think for many people, the idea of the DA having a sort of oversight role over the ANC, I mean, that's a real problem. And this is the long hand of our history and part of our present that's playing a big role in this.
Absolutely. I think for all of its pretense, there are deep, deep factions within the ANC that have very, very rigid understandings of identity. And they cannot conceive of South Africa or serious governance by anybody that is not black, and black as they define it. I think having said that, there's similar problems in the DA. I think the DA has done horrendously and alienated the black middle class. It's just not sensitive to issues of race. It's not sensitive to our issues of history. And had the DA played its cards right, it would be a much bigger party. The ANC's decline should have been to the benefit of the DA. It shot itself in the foot by not being more sensitive to our history and not being more sensitive to the issues of racial inclusion in our society.
Is it possible that there's also a division around age in the ANC? So it's been interesting to me that older people in the ANC seem to talk more. And I mean, I can't put this in numerical terms, but it seems to me more likely that older leaders in the ANC, maybe national leaders in the ANC, might be more inclined, as you say, to look at a sort of DA deal. Younger leaders, maybe provincial leaders in the ANC, might be more inclined to go with the EFF or something else.
Yeah, and I think that there is a generational divide, and I think the generational divide is much more complex than you're suggesting. I think there are parts of the older leadership that would be open, if you like, to a DA relationship. They are prioritizing growth. They need economic stability, and they are concerned about service delivery. There are younger leaders, and what I mean by younger leaders, the emerging political elite within the ANC, the provincial leaders and related factions that are more committed to an EFF-MK deal. For them, the advancement, their personal advancement within the ANC and the state is important, and they are more sensitive to issues of race, and particularly some of the really horrendous remarks that individuals in the DA seem to have made. I think that there's a broader layer of generational people that are far more open to a much more non-racial inclusive agenda. And for that, they often not in the ANC, they often outside the party political structures, and they want to kind of find a new South Africa. And in a sense, the political system doesn't enable their voice. And I think that that's the real challenge of our time.
How do you assess the chances of the ANC working with the EFF? I mean, Julius Malema clearly has, a long history with some of the people in the ANC, still seems to have friendly relations, let me put it like that, with some key decision makers in the ANC. I mean, that would seem almost obvious that the ANC should work with the EFF, and yet there is quite a difficult personal relationship in some cases.
Look, I'll say 2 or 3 things about the EFF. I think it's firstly the most dangerous alliance that the ANC can make. I think that the EFF has really fascist tendencies. It has rigid identity, racialized identities. It's in many ways violent. It's completely disruptive. And I think it's perhaps the single most dangerous alliance that the ANC can make. It is also not a reliable partner. I think it's deeply, deeply corrupt. It has very, very dubious connections. And it's never been a good partner to the ANC. It's more disruptive. It's never prioritized political stability. It's never prioritized economic growth. If you like, it's a younger version of the Jacob Zuma phenomenon. And that's the danger about the EFF. If the ANC were to align with the EFF, I recognize that the large numbers of the people come from within it, but I think it would be a recipe for the utter destruction of the ANC and frankly the destruction of South Africa. I think if you want to see the example of Bolsonaro in Brazil emerging in South Africa, a Trumpian agenda, then there's nobody else but the EFF that will realize that.
Sure. whatever happens, do you think a coalition or a working agreement's really going to change government policy? Now, in a country like ours, defined by racialized inequality, you really need coherent policy coming from government to try and change that structure, to grow the economy, to reduce that inequality. But if no one actually is coherent, if there's no strong support for anything, then nothing is going to change. And isn't that maybe one of the biggest risks we face?
I think our coalition governments have a terrible history in South Africa. Look at every single coalition attempt in recent years, and we've had an implosion of that local government or an implosion of that regional government. So I am really worried about the track record of coalition governments in South Africa. The one thing that I think may be in our medium-term interest is a kind of government of national unity. I think South Africa is in a place where no single party or no immediate coalition government may bring that, may create the kinds of stability and growth we need. A government of national unity, if you like, a reset back to 1994 to establish the first foundational principles of how to get growth going, how to restructure. I think that's our singular best hope in the short term. That does mean prioritizing a certain set of alliances. It does mean setting out first principles. And it does mean getting the reformers in the ANC, perhaps the reformers in the DA, perhaps the reformers in the IFP, perhaps the reformers in some smaller party to give at least a support base of about 65, 68%. That gives you enough of a support base. And then what we need is leadership. We cannot have the leadership of Cyril Ramaphosa of the last 5 years playing the long game and frankly forgetting the short game. Because if we play the long game and forget the short game, South Africa doesn't have the breathing room to eventually get to the long game.
Professor Adam Habib, thank you. Vice Chancellor at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. Do appreciate the time. 28 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Ikram Reindeers, how's he feeling?
He's amped and ready to take on Nigeria's big stars. It's going to be a showdown come tomorrow. That's the Bafana striker. Fresh off a 14-goal season with Stellenbosch, Reiners feels indebted to coach Hugo Bruges for this opportunity. He emphasized aiming for at least a point in Nigeria and a win against Zimbabwe at home.
For me to be here, I'm happy, and for the coach also to give me the opportunity. It's not easy to play on this level, like international level, compared to the PSL. There's a weight difference between the quality the overseas-based players have and the quality we have here. I know we have here in South Africa also quality players, but for me it's a good opportunity also for all of us to going into the game on Friday night and show our quality and at least get a point or win the game.
Orlando Pirates defender Thabiso Monyane says despite coming short in their DStv Premiership title chase, being able to defend their two domestic cup competitions makes the 23-24 season a success. The Buccaneers finished runners-up behind Mamelodi Sundowns in the league, but twice defeated their rivals to clinch both the MTN 8 and Nedbank Cup. Monyane added he rates Pirates' campaign a solid 8 out of 10.
Looking at the season, it's been a roller coaster of a season, you know. We know we've had our ups and downs, you know. If one was to sum up the season, I would give ourselves also a solid 8, you know. We managed to defend our cups, and we were quite happy about that.
Moving to cricket, where India's pace attack blew away Ireland on a difficult pitch in New York as they started the T20 World Cup with an 8-wicket victory. Hardik Pandya took 3 for 27 as Ireland fought back to scramble their way to 96 all-out with 24 balls of their innings left unused. And finally, cycling, the world champion Remco Evenepoel has taken the overall lead at the Criterium du Dauphiné with a pulsating time trial win. 2 months after breaking a shoulder, the Belgian Evenepoel Vanderpoel won the 34-kilometre individual effort in the 8-day criterium by 17 seconds from Britain's Josh Tarling and 39 seconds ahead of Primož Roglic. More sport, top of the hour on Sunrise. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. A lot more to come in the next little while. We'll hear from the SACP. They seem to be heading towards the EFF. Well, let me put it to them. That's in the next half hour. With SFM leading the conversation, 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the ANC will hold its crucial Special National Executive Committee meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, later this morning to discuss various options to constitute government within the next 2 weeks. City of Cape Town authorities say 180 dwellings have been flooded in Nomzamo and Strand. Disaster Risk Management says officials are working in the affected area as more rainfall is expected. And Israel's military has struck what it said was a Hamas compound inside a UN school in central Gaza. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Joburg first up, and protesting again in Marlborough Gardens. We saw this erupt last night around 7 p.m. We're seeing it again this morning. So Marlborough Drive effectively blocked and closed in that Marlborough Gardens area. If you do that run along Marlborough Drive between the N3 highway and the Mike 1 on Santon side, so Limbo Park to Santon, you will see some trouble this morning. A lot of traffic backlogging. Good idea to just take the N3 and hook into the M1 South, send a bit of traffic down through the Woodmead and Santon areas this morning, or off at London Road and reroute through Alex if you know that routing through as well. Earlier crash on the N1 South at Buccleuch. Looks like it's out of the way. That N1 normalising to heavy delays though between Brockfontein and the New Road exit this morning. Across in Durban, this is a big story. It'll run across the day. The N2 northbound closed between Queen Nandi Drive and Komashu Highway due to a cash in transit heights. Very heavy pressure on the highway as you line up through towards Queen Nandi Drive, and anything that acts as an alternative route is super busy this morning. Umgeni Road coming off the N2 through Springfield Park, Dumasani Mkaya through Sianda, Komashu up towards sort of Dust Road for connections to the R102. M4, the Ruthfirst Highway getting out of Durban, taking extra volume up towards the Mshlanga area as well. Probably even Mshlanga Rocks Drive looking very busy as the alternative. One of the best options out of Durban stays to Chris Hani over the Connaught Bridge off Umgeni Road and up towards the M2 at the Komashu on-ramp where you can join. The highway is open from there. Just staying in Durban, it's a pretty busy morning. Jams on the M4 Southern Freeway, Clearwood to CBD, M7, Hunstedman into St John's Avenue is bad, and a crash at Westville on the M13 heading into Durban, causing additional delays out of Pinetown as well. Cape Town, all very slow go this morning, particularly the N1 from Plattekloof all the way through to the city centre area. The rain absolutely bucketing down, so to say, everything on a go slow around Cape Town. And Quebec, the N2 is open this morning. It's been on and off closed over the last couple of days because of some issues with sea debris up on the highway at Deal Party. But if you're coming in from Blue Water Bay, N2 open and flowing this morning. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intaleng Lechela, morning again. How are the markets looking?
Well, in Asia, stock markets are trading mostly higher following positive cues from global markets overnight amid optimism about the outlook for global interest rates. The Asia Dow is up 1% and the Japanese Nikkei has gained 0.7%. In Wall Street, futures are pretty flat, just above the flat line. A bit of a surprise considering the positive momentum that initially boosted the S&P 500 and Nasdaq to record highs yesterday. Back at home, the JSE pretty muted with no changes noted in the all-share at yesterday's close, but we saw an uptick in the Resources 10 complex, which traded 1.8% higher. Looking at the Rand now, the local unit extending its losses today, trading close to the 19 Rand mark, a level last seen early last month. It's currently sitting at 18.90 to the dollar.
And then business morale improving in the second quarter.
Well, some good news from the economics front. Businesses seem to be a bit more confident in the local economy. That's according to the RMB BER Business Confidence Index. In the second quarter, ahead of the elections, the index rose to 35 from 30 points recorded in the first quarter. All sectors surveyed saw an improvement other than in vehicle sales. Now, morale among new vehicle dealerships fell 6 points to 10, with buyers sensitive to the high interest rates environment and holding on to their vehicles for longer. Now, chief economist at RMB, Isaiah Mhlanga, noted that morale ahead of the election showed a welcome uptick, but remained below the levels conducive to foster increased private sector investment and faster economic growth. Mhlanga further said that lower inflation through the remainder of the year and possibility of lower interest rates later in the year could boost consumer spending moving forward.
And Vukile Property Fund, it's eyeing growth in Europe.
Now, the property player says it sees opportunity to expand further in Europe, eyeing more assets in Spain, assets in Portugal and the UK. Vukile seems to find that environment less unpredictable. The group said it had explored opportunities here in South Africa, but said that in most cases the pricing had not made economic sense. Vukile further said finding assets that are priced well in this tight monetary policy environment has proven to be tough. Now, this announcement comes alongside its annual results where the group maintained a strong balance sheet and posted growth in the value of its properties in South Africa and Spain. This translated into a 10.5% jump in its dividend and a near 7% rise in funds from operations. Now, the group is positive about its prospects, saying it's confident it'll deliver on its guidance despite the challenging macroeconomic environment.
And Taling Lechela, thanks so much. Back, of course, tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Cabello on the line from eThekwini. Cabello, hi, good morning. Coalitions, go for it.
Morning, SG. How are you doing?
I'm well, man. How are you?
It's so surprising that this coalition, they call a government unit or government of unity, it doesn't consider a human being. It doesn't consider the people of this country, black in majority. It's only talking about the rand and the business, which means we are the commodities. We became a people of this country, but we became a commodity who have to feel for the business people. We don't care about business people. We don't care about rent. The business people, they want us as South Africa. We don't want them. They want our gold here. They want our mines here. They want our resources. We don't want them. So why we feel sorry and feel that if we do a collision with the MK party and the AFF is a threat to the business? It's not a threat to us as the people of South Africa. It's a threat to them.
Yeah, I think, Cabello, the thought is slightly deeper than that. I mean, I hear your point, and I know, Cabello, you're not the only one who feels like that. Absolutely. I think the idea is that business would create more jobs, which would then help people, and as you say, mostly black people. That's the idea. I realize that there are problems with that, but that's the idea.
The government has to create a conducive environment for the business, not the business does not create jobs. The government creates jobs.
Sure,
they have to create a conducive government. Stephen, you cannot do alliance with the DA, the Black Party or the African Party. They cannot do the alliance with the DA finishing class. They cannot.
All right.
They cannot, Stephen. That if they do that, they will see what is coming for them in 2 months. We are not threatening them, we're warning them. If they do that, let them bury themselves and issue the death certificate. I don't know where, because Home Affairs will be somewhere else. We'll show them who we are. Thank you, SG.
Cabello, thank you. All right. I mean, you're with the Matthews Pauser line of thought in a way. Is it Atuka in Matlasana? Atuka, hi.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to the listeners, brother.
Go for it, man.
Stephen, I just want to say I'm disappointed today.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed in Adam Habib's analysis because it seems to me that he came here to spew his hatred for the EFF. I mean, do you guys know what are the 4 pillars of fascism?
Well,
the 4 pillars of fascism. Look at the 4 pillars of fascism. Those 4 pillars don't tell me nothing about EFF. He comes here every single chance he gets. EFF is fascist, and when we called him out on Twitter, when we challenged him on a debate on fascism, he ran away. He comes here, he says he speaks what he wants to speak about the EFF, and then he runs away. Adam Habib is nothing but a racist who thought using the N-word was an academic exercise. Is that fair of me to say that, Stephen, about Adam? No, it's not fair.
Yeah, it was a very strong view, and I mean, I thought it was a legitimate question. Could the ANC work with the EFF? It's one of the questions of the moment. It was a strong view. He has a right to his view, but it is complicated. Go on.
But Stephen, if I had come in there to say I'm going to give you my view, and I say to you that DA is racist, obviously you would push back. You would say, why would you say the DA is racist? Because they've been pushing for this and this and that. Every time Adam Habib says these lies about the EFF, nobody pushes him. He's supposed to come here, give us an analysis on how the coalitions can work. We need unity right now. We don't need any party to be vilified by the likes of Adam Habib. We need unity in the country. We need to understand the DA. We need to understand the EFF and the ANC so that we can tell our respective parties how to work together in a united country. Not coming here and vilifying parties. I mean, it's old, man.
All right. No, Atuka, thank you. On the line from Atlasana, strong points, 20 minutes to 8.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing storms river, free falling over Plet having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30, repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
When my son was accepted for national championships, I wasn't prepared for the costs. Then I remembered that Cash Converters has a 30-day cash advance loan. Just go to your nearest Cash Converters store with your jewelry, electronics, tech, or something valuable. They'll keep it safe for you and you'll walk out with the cash you need. This loan made it possible for my son's dreams to come true. Now I'm a proud mom of a champion. Cash Converters. We buy, we sell, we loan cash. The clock is on a downhill towards the world's most prestigious games, with a wide variety of exhilarating action such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, football, and many more. The 6th of June marks 50 days to the Olympics. The world's elite athletes are all eyeing a podium finish. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
18 minutes to 8 the time. Good morning. Well, yesterday, the South African Communist Party saying it believes the ANC should not do a deal with either the Democratic Alliance or Umkhonto we Sizwe and should not work with them in government. It said the DA was backed by the West and MK was a party of ethnic mobilization. Dr. Alex Mashilo is a member of the South African Communist Party Central Committee and national spokesperson. Dr. Mashilo, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners. Thank you for having us.
So if you don't want the ANC to work with MK and you don't want them to work with the DA, and if you look at the maths, then clearly you want the ANC to work with the EFF.
Clearly, the EFF is not the only party in the mathematics because the ANC and the EFF in the mathematics will need more other parties. That's why we are talking about a grand coalition that has the features of government of national unity, excluding both the DA and the MKP.
That's excluding 35% of the vote.
Definitely, because that government of national unity or that grand coalition with the features of government of national unity has to be purpose-driven. There is nothing in that purpose that the DA and the MKP meet as the criteria. Let us deal with the following over and above what we have just said. We campaign for a national minimum wage. The DA campaign against it. We campaign for the protection of collective bargaining and extension of collective bargaining to cover more workers and protect their rights. The DA campaigned against it. We campaign for so many things that the DA campaigned against it. And if you look at its manifesto and the policy that it unveiled afterwards, it actually threatens to roll back the achievements of the workers. So that we cannot accept.
Okay, you say that that you want a government of national unity without the DA and without MK. So are you saying then that everything that the DA did, the Freedom Front Plus did too, and the Freedom Front Plus can be a member of this government of national unity?
In fact, we did the math and in doing the math, there are parties we didn't include in the math because what you need is 50% plus one. And the math we did, taking into account the parties that are in this grand coalition that we say it can have the features of a government of national unity, gives us 210 seats. But we respect what the ANC has said in saying that they are engaging with all other parties. Even if the Freedom Front Plus has got its own policies. The fact of the matter is that when you look at the SACP and the working class in particular, and the marches that the DA has led to the COSATU house, accusing COSATU of causing unemployment, while unemployment is not caused, there is just no common purpose at all. So we are talking about a purpose-driven government. If the Freedom Front Plus, for example, would wish to advance its purpose, which goes against the interests of the working class, therefore it must not form part of that grand coalition that will have the features of a government of national unity.
Okay, so the maths is curious because, I mean, the same would probably apply to the African Christian Democratic Party. The same may or may not apply, I don't know, to the Patriotic Alliance. You say 210 seats. So then who are you looking at? You're looking clearly at the economic freedom fighters. I mean, it must be, right?
You really like the economic freedom fighters.
No,
when you look at what
you're saying
Okay.
no MK and no DA. The EFF is the next biggest party.
No, look, I said the EFF and the ANC will need other parties. There are other parties there. So you are not mentioning them. I already said the ANC and the EFF will need the other parties. There are parties there which have got 2 seats, 1 seat. And by the way, those parties have reached out and say we would like to work with you. And then what we are saying is that this must be purpose-driven. That's why we identified the elements of what we call the programmatic basis of such a grand coalition with the features of government of national unity.
Okay. So would you be happy for the ANC to work with the Inkatha Freedom Party? I mean, would that be one of the parties?
In fact, the scenario that we are talking about of 210 seats excludes the Inkatha Freedom Party. But the Inkatha Freedom Party has reached out and said we would like to talk to the African National Congress. For us, what is more important is the purpose. If you don't fit the purpose, solely you should not enter because you are not going to drive in the same direction.
Dr. Mashilo, are you suggesting that Umkhonto we Sizwe is a party of ethno-nationalization and the IFP isn't?
Look, I'm saying the math I am talking about does not include the IFP. However, the IFP has reached out. And by the way, there are many reasons we advance about the MKP. You know, Stephen, the SACP was the first political organization in South Africa to identify what we called corporate state capture. And when we did so was because we did literature review and looked at a report of what happened in Eastern Europe during the transition from former Soviet states to Western liberal democracy and market-driven capitalism. There was what they called buying the law, which is where corporate state capture emerged. And when we looked at what happened under the leadership of Jacob Zuma, we saw exactly similar features having emerged, where people who did not contest for elections were in charge of the key levers of state power, including recommending and appointing through him those people who should be in cabinet. Jacob Zuma differed with us, and he said to us, give me the evidence. We said, we do not know the extent to which you are implicated. Therefore, the answer lies in the establishment of a commission of inquiry into state capture. Jacob Zuma rejected that. You will recall that we spent that whole year of 2016 campaigning for the establishment of the commission until the former public protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, prescribed it. But what she added as an innovation, which we didn't advance at that time, was that the Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court should be the one to identify the judge for the president to appoint.
Okay. Dr. Mashilo, sorry, there are other things I need to get to. This entire situation, the ANC falling to 40% and creating, the need for coalition, is, I suspect, for various reasons, but one of them must be that voters believe the ANC has treated them badly. Do you think the ANC will ever get above 50% again?
Look, you are talking about a democratic scenario where there is contestation and where you do not have things that remain the same. The ANC may decline further, and depending on its conduct, the ANC may recover and even exceed 50%. It is a matter of political struggle. But let me just underline the following. You know how you carry yourself, Stephen, as a political party, or how your leaders carry themselves can remove people away from you. If you look at how the ANC behaved when we turned and campaigned against Jacob Zuma, whether you like it or not, we experienced the decline beginning in the 2016 local government election, and the decline was going down. And when we tried to correct that situation because of factionalism, among others with Jacob Zuma as the epicenter, the ANC became weak. And the MKP is actually a culmination of that factionalism. So we need to accept that. And when he broke out because of that factionalism, his loyalists broke away with him. But it is better to advance renewal and go back to the ground, because over 40%, in fact, there are more people, not over 40%, because the turnout was 58%. So the balance of the people who didn't vote and the balance of the over 1 million votes that the ANC did not, in fact, the ANC lost. When you look at the mathematics there, the MKP gained votes, but it did not take the totality of the votes that the ANC had lost. So the ANC has lost 1 million votes than the MKP has gained, and there are these other people who didn't vote. Over and above that, we have a large population of unregistered voters. So the ANC's future depends on how it will treat its allies, depends on how it will treat the working class, because part of the decline comes from the austerity measures we were fighting against, which have turned the working class away from the ANC. So how it will carry itself, it will determine its voter performance in future.
Dr. Mishilo, Dr. Bladen Zamande, obviously former leader of the SACP, still in your top leadership. He is high enough on the ANC's list to go back to Parliament. Do you want him to stay in government? Should he be in cabinet again?
You know, involving us in appointing the ministers. Can we take it? I like your approach, by the way, and congratulations for that. You don't fear asking any question. Now, at this stage, our focus is on the formation of the government. So once the president has been elected, we will move into the stage where we will say, what is the caliber of the people needed to turn around the situation? I will come back to you. You will talk to me, and I will openly say, these are our perspectives. Okay.
Dr. Alex Mishilo, as always, thank you. Member of the Central Committee of the South African Communist Party, national spokesperson, 7 minutes to 8.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Quick update on a couple of the big issues we're watching this morning. Marlborough Drive should be avoided in the Marlborough Gardens area. Protesting erupting last night and then a second rerun of it this morning. Marlborough Drive at Zinnia. If you move between the N3 Limbro Park and the Mike 1 at Santon, just to avoid Marlborough Drive. Probably come off the N3 at London Road and reroute through Alex if you've missed that. The Mike 1 north up to Buccleuch and then, the N3 north up to Buccleuch and then down the Mike 1 into Santon. That way that route is busy, but Marlborough Drive is literally standing and the road is currently blocked. And if you're just joining us, Durban's got a major traffic alert this morning with a cash in transit heist closing the N2 North at Queen Nandi Drive. So the N2 North badly backed up from Umgeni Road. A lot of traffic piling off and jamming in Nanda Road, Seacow Lake, Umgeni Road, Springfield, down towards sort of Connaught Bridge in Chrisani. A lot of traffic jamming up on Umhlanga Rocks Drive. That's really busy this morning on your way through Durban North. The M4 from Durban up through towards Umhlanga. That's the other alternative. And also motorists coming off at Queen Nandi Drive working out through sort of Newlands and Kumashu. So big queues on Dumasani Makaya up towards the R102 connection at Duffs Road. So the N2 closed and everything else just really battling along in terms of alternative routes. Also just staying in Durban, the M4 is heavy this morning from Congela in towards the CBD area. And Cape Town, the rain belting down this morning. So everything on a go slow, particularly the N1. You'll sit from Belleville right through to the city centre. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, many calls coming through. Let's go to Bongani and Mpumalanga. Bongani, hi. A discussion around parliamentary procedure. Go for it.
Yes, good morning, SG. Yes, I just want to understand what's going to happen if the ANC decide to go to the benches and to be a opposition party. What's going to happen to President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Yeah.
Is going to be allowed to be MP, or does he have to withdraw? He's going to lose his benefits for president.
Yes, that's a good point. I think Bongani, he might. So if he became an MP again, he might lose his benefits. I understand, though, someone told me, and I'd need to check this, that he could also volunteer in Parliament, which means he doesn't receive a salary from Parliament, but then he would keep his benefits. So it's a little bit of a way around it. I mean, volunteer in inverted commas, but I think there is a way around it, because I think of the president of Kgalema Motlanthe, who was president and then became deputy president. But I'd need to check that, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Another thing, the second thing, I don't know. I think the EFF, they must have to be humble themselves and be straight on the point. I don't think the EFF is going to come and overtake other parties now. The trend of going down now is showing the signs, and the 2026 election, they are coming now in 2 years' time. I don't think they're going to make it in this
in the local elections.
Yes, because of the MK in the space. So I think they have to go back to the drawing board. I don't know what's going to happen to Malema. The election are coming on December, but I don't see it. If it started like this, I don't see them going up again.
Yeah, well, Bongani, I don't know, is the short answer. I do think the fact that they went down is significant. Bongani and Mpumalanga, thank you. It is significant, but I don't know. Jock in KwaZulu-Natal. Jock, hi, coalitions.
Morning, how are you?
I'm well, go for it.
Okay, so what I feel is that everybody has an opinion on this matter.
Yeah.
But none of the politicians actually go back to the constituencies and ask them what do they want to do. So like real politicians, everybody has these feelings. And unfortunately, like I always say, we as human beings have feelings, and we do have to trust them a bit. But at the same time, we need to turn our politicians into heroes, which is what happened in 1994. Yes, no one ever thought that the national government would work with the ANC, but it happened, and we created heroes and villains out of it. But at the end of the day, it brought us to where we are without a civil war, which was most important in terms of that didn't happen anywhere else in the country. So all the politicians and all the people that are actually talking on the line actually have never considered the people of the country to say, you know what, there's 16 million people that voted. If they join up and actually work, even though it's going to be as hard as it possibly can, and there'll be a lot of opinions, up until we give the person a chance to actually do it, that's when we should actually say yes or no. Yeah. And the other point is that with the DA and the ANC, if the DA and the ANC have to join, the DA and the ANC will actually have the biggest share that any voting group has ever had in this country in the history. So they would have, I think my calculation, 62%, which is the majority. So I don't understand why, if we work on in terms of every vote counts, 66% of the people have already spoken. I don't understand what the other arguments are. And like I said, there's always some cheap politician that will come and tell us, no, they don't want to work because of the color of their skin. I'm from KZN, and so if you go to La Mercy, you don't see Indian people, black people, and white people not helping each other. So how is it possible that we can help each other when times and situations call for it? But at the same time, we can be so indifferent when it comes to voting and population, and be so skeptical about the color of our skin. I just can't understand it. So I'm going to say that, you know what, please, people are on the radio, listen and hear the politicians talk, and remember that they still talk while their mouths don't move. That saying came about not because of any generalization. It really came to say that the people of the country are greater than the politicians that run it. And like I said, there's great leaders that aren't and don't have the opportunity to stand up, just because that's what history has given us or given them. And we must just remember that we are a country. Do we want to actually have something for the future? Do we want to have a greater country? And do we really want to be the icon of Africa, is what I will always tell all the people of South Africa to remember. That the icons of South Africa is held in great esteem around Africa and in the world. And if we want to be great and remain great, it takes hard choices and decisions to make that.
All right, Jock in KwaZulu-Natal, thank you. Yeah, look, I mean, I must just say, I think that in any political party, the decision of who you work with, which coalition partner, is very, very difficult. And that's why leaders make the decisions. Because if you open it to voters, you basically get talk radio. You basically get chaos. You get people saying, no, I don't want, everybody wants a different thing. And I think that's one of the problems. So I hear you, but I think this is just reality. All right, we'll take more of your calls because there's so many. It's such a rich, interesting, complicated, important conversation, this issue around coalitions. Muzi, Kirk, KG, Kantisa, I do see you. We will try and get you. We'll talk also about the legalization of dacha in the next half an hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, ANC-NEC meeting to pave the way for a new administration and an Israeli strike on a UN shelter in Gaza. Good morning. The ANC will hold its crucial Special National Executive Committee meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, later this morning to discuss various options to constitute government within the next 2 weeks. Some party members say a ANC-DA coalition is the best option for the country's stability, while others, including alliance partners Kusatu and the SACP, have strongly rejected the deal. Tabo Mukobo reports.
After a marathon talks at the top officials level in their National Working Committee, ANC spokesperson Mahlengi Bengu Mutsiri says they are now looking at the idea of forming a government of national unity or a minority government. She says they've met with the DA, the EFF, the IFP, the NFP and the PA, with the MK party not giving them a hearing.
The ANC has repeatedly reached out to the MK with no positive response. Our door remains open as we continue to reach out to every party.
But she says there is also a fear about some of the permutations, with some NEC members and alliance partners not happy with a possible DA coalition arrangement.
The N2 northbound at Nandi Drive before Kwamashu off-ramp north of Durban has been closed to traffic, this after a cash-in-transit robbery earlier this morning. Traffic has been affected and motorists have been advised to use alternative routes. Paramedics responding to the scene says no one was seriously injured in the incident. ALS paramedic spokesperson Gareth Jameson.
Paramedics proceeded in the direction of the incident and waited on the all clear from SAPS before making their way onto the scene. Paramedics arrived on scene to find that a cash-in-transit vehicle had been attacked by alleged robbers with apparent explosives used. Paramedics assessed the occupants of the cash vehicle, however, fortunately they were not injured during the robbery. The N2 northbound will be closed for some time to allow SAPS to investigate this incident, so I'd recommend all motorists to avoid this area at all costs.
City of Cape Town authorities say 180 dwellings have been flooded in Nomzamo Strand. Flooding has also been reported in Kailicha, Philippi, Guguletu, Kraaifontein, Elsies River, Dunoon and Belgravia. Hundreds of residents have been affected following heavy rain this week. Disaster Risk Management spokesperson Charlotte Powell says officials are working in the affected areas as more rainfall is expected.
The Roads Department is providing sand and milling, while Informal Settlement Management is making assessments in flooded areas and will provide flood kits. Many roadways across the city has been flooded, and the Roads Department is clearing debris and unblocking drains. The Electricity Department is attending to weather-related power outages in several areas. Downpours are expected to continue throughout the day, and assessments on the ground are ongoing as reports come in.
Sfiso Piose, who's accused number 5 in the killing of 2 women in Polokwane, is expected to take the stand this morning at the High Court in Limpopo. He has been charged with 2 counts of murder alongside Stanley Lishabane, Ndondo Butelezi and Emmanuel Dlamini. They allegedly shot and killed Lishabane's wife and a business partner in Ladana Industrial Area in Polokwane. Abafani Munyai reports.
The murder trial is scheduled to continue until Friday next week. Accused number 4, Thembelani Dlamini, testified on the circumstances on his arrest. Dlamini says the police did not recover any cell phones from him during his arrest. He says he has never set foot in Polokwane before and after the killings until he was arrested and transported to Polokwane police station. Dlamini refuted claims that he knew accused number 3, Richard Zulu, who died after a short illness in police custody.
And finally, Israel's military has struck what it said was a Hamas compound inside a UN school in central Gaza. Local journalists say more than 20 people were killed in the attack. Displaced people had been sheltering at the school. The BBC's Yolanda Nell reports.
Videos shared on social media show the destruction of classrooms and dead bodies wrapped in white shrouds and blankets. Israel's military said it had conducted a precise strike on a Hamas compound embedded inside the UNRWA school in the urban Nusrat refugee camp. It said Hamas and Islamic Jihad forces who took part in the deadly 7th of October attacks on southern Israel had been operating at the site, and that as it targeted them, it took extensive precautions to reduce harm to civilians. The Hamas-run government's media office in Gaza accused Israel of carrying out a horrific massacre.
Recapping the top story, the ANC will hold its crucial Special National Executive Committee meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, later this morning to discuss various options to constitute government within the next 2 weeks. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's rugby. The Bulls looking to adopt a test-like approach in the United Rugby Championship knockouts as they face Benetton. And cricket, it's a historic win for Uganda as they bowl out Papua New Guinea for 77 in their T20 World Cup debut. We'll have the details just before 8:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just focusing on Durban this morning with the closure of the N2 North at Queen Nandi Drive due to this cash heist, and every route around Durban North is seriously heavily congested. So the N2 North queuing from Umgena Road and then a forced exit at Queen Nandi Drive. Motorists are ducking off well before that, jamming up routes like Inanda through Sikau Lake, Umgena Road through Springfield area. The Connaught Bridge is jammed up. Masabalali Yangwa, Mshlanga Rocks Drive has got traffic all through it, both directions this morning. Dumasani Mkaya up through Sayanda and Komashu up towards Duffs Road for connections to the R102. Very heavy. The M4 between Mshlanga and Central Durban jammed both directions. So those routes to the north of Durban are heavy. If you've got a flight to connect with and you've got to get up towards King Shaka, make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. Just staying in Durban, it's a busy run. The M4 on the southern side coming out through Congella into the CBD is heavy. The N3 Pavilion to Sherwood both ways, real big backlogs there as well. Mid-Rand traffic pretty busy this morning. Brockfontein interchange all the way down to about Olifantsfontein before you're out of that. The N3 North is heavy from Galulis right through to Beclue interchange. A lot of that is because the closure of Marlborough Drive at Marlborough Gardens due to protesting. So motorists sticking on the N3 and jamming that run up. In Cape Town, very wet conditions. Give yourself time to get through safely. The N1 has a crash after Yipti Yaga inbound, and then it stays busy right through the city centre. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 8. Good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Another day in coalition country with no clear direction yet as to which way we're going to go. So much to sort of look at with this issue, and I think we are going to hear from more and more people, and we'll try and sort of hear from more and more people and try and hear from you. Don't forget, tomorrow, of course, we'll have half an hour only to hear from you, so looking forward to that already. We will try and fit more calls in the next half hour. We do have some guests lined up. We will be talking about trying to end spam calls, which have actually just driven me insane. I get to the point where I feel I've lost the use of my phone. And I've never been one of these people who wanted to sort of block unknown numbers. But I'm now getting there. I really am. I kind of don't like the idea of, if someone wants to speak to you, you should speak to them. That's kind of my view. But now I'm at the point where I actually just can't anymore. I want my phone back. So anyway, we'll talk about that. And also find out a little bit more about what is supposed to be the legalization or the decriminalization of cannabis, but still with restrictions. We'll talk about that too. The number 086 000 2032. Good morning, 9 after 8.
In an election period, isn't that how it should be? Meaning that they've set the agenda on the basis of their manifestos, and then media holds them accountable to their manifestos.
So I think that what you want to do, especially as the public broadcaster, is say, what are the issues that matter to people? What do people know and what do they need to know? Because they're making choices about which political parties they may vote for, right? When I say that the political parties set the news agenda so they'd go have big events, understandably so. But is it really news? Rallies are rallies. Each leader is going to stand up and tell you how great they are and how rubbish all the other political parties are. It's not really much news, whereas we should have been going, well, gender-based violence, can we make sure that we ask them at least one gendered question? These are issues that are important to our audiences. And if you look at the kind of issues that people are interested in, so that we can actually start to make sure that we're meeting their needs in these ways.
Okay. William Bird, Director of Media Monitoring Africa.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
All right, 10 minutes now after 8. Well, last week, in the middle of all of the election, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, enacting the Cannabis for Private Purposes Act. You may remember there was the Constitutional Court ruling which said that the consumption of cannabis, smoking dagga, must be allowed in a private dwelling. Did put some limitations on that. Now, finally, it's become an act. Russ Prince Rastafari is a legal activist and chair of the Cannabis Development Council and also was a member of the Presidential Steering Committee on Cannabis and Hemp. Russ Prince, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to all of the listeners.
From what I understand, you're not happy with the final bill. Why not?
No, Stephen, we are not. We were really hoping that this bill would speak to the interests of the cannabis community and respect, protect, promote, and advance the rights of the cannabis community. But the very thing that the Act set out to do, which was to respect the right to use cannabis in privacy, it doesn't even do that because it doesn't tell South Africans where they can legally source cannabis. And any legislative scheme that fails to provide for a legal source for either recreational cannabis or for medicinal cannabis is fatally flawed. And also within South Africa, our constitution makes it very clear that laws have to be adopted in accordance with a certain standard. And Parliament has set for itself certain standards that it must follow when it adopts laws. And they dismally failed to ensure that there was adequate public participation and meaningful public consultation. So, you know, the laws must fit, or the rights must fit the people and not the other way around. And unfortunately, this is one of those laws that requires the people of South Africa to serve it while it doesn't serve us.
Russ Prince, one of the things I've never understood with this, as it's gone through the legislative process, is the idea of saying people can have cannabis at home and then limiting the amount. And let me just explain where I'm going. So as I understand it, what it now says is that an individual person can have up to 600 grams of dried cannabis in a private dwelling. If there's more than one person living there, it can go up to 1.2 kilograms. So you could have 20 people living in a house, in a property, and you're still allowed your 1.2 kilograms, right? And you can have 4 flowering cannabis plants per person. Okay, and only 8 per household. All right, that's the limitation. Now, I don't have a strong view on all of this one way or another, but if I wanted to, right now, under the law, I could go to a bottle store, buy their entire stock, go to 10 bottle stores, buy their entire stock, and cover my entire property in booze, just for me, and there'll be no problem. So surely there's a constitutional issue here. Cannabis is being treated so differently to alcohol.
Correct. And that is what in law is called naked preference. And the government is not supposed to be using naked preference when they rule or when they enact laws. I mean, naked preference was the very basis of apartheid. The fact that people got certain benefits simply because they belong to a certain class or group of people. And what we see here is that cannabis and alcohol and tobacco are being treated vastly different, which obviously implicates equality and dignity issues. And what we are seeing here is that there's the manner in which society treats alcohol tobacco and cannabis is vastly different. We've seen that both the Alcohol and the Tobacco Act were introduced into Parliament as Section 76 bills, which obviously means bills that affects the provinces. But strangely, when government adopted the cannabis law, they felt that this is a Section 75 bill that supposedly doesn't affect the interest of the provinces, which is ludicrous. Because if ever there was a bill that required the inputs of provinces maximally, it was the Cannabis for Private Purposes bill, because the usage of cannabis is cultural and customary within South Africa. And this new bill, it doesn't acknowledge the cultural and customary nature of cannabis. And it is unfortunate that the historical context of cannabis within this country was not acknowledged or recognized when the President and Parliament passed this bill.
Is there now a situation where the Constitution basically said you could have 4 plants at home, right? The Constitutional Court, excuse me. The Act...
No, incorrect. That's not correct. There was, in the first iteration of the bill, there was a suggestion made in respect of the amount of plants. The bill that was finally passed by the President does not contain any references to amount of plants that we have or the amount of cannabis that is to follow in the regulations that is now within the purview of the Minister of Justice, which is another constitutional flaw, because we argue that those things should have been discussed with the people of South Africa in Parliament, and that should not be the prerogative of the Minister, because we feel that would be beyond his power or ultra vires.
Okay, so do you believe then you could go back to the Constitutional Court is where I'm going with this?
Oh, we would have to, because the bill has now been signed into an act, and that act would remain law unless it is declared unconstitutional. So we would be approaching the court to ask that this act be declared unconstitutional, primarily on the ground that Parliament hasn't facilitated adequate and meaningful public consultation and participation, and then also that ultimately the President, as well as the executive and the legislature, they misconceived the nature of their constitutional obligation. The Constitutional Court in 2018 ordered them to construct a law that would ensure that the rights of the cannabis community are respected, protected, promoted, and advanced in accordance with the Constitution. It didn't tell them to only make provision for privacy rights. And it is there where the legislature and the executive misconceived or misconstrued the nature of their constitutional obligations. Because in South Africa, if a law falls short of complying with any provision or guarantee within the Bill of Rights, it can be held unconstitutional. So if this new act doesn't comply with equality rights, then it is unconstitutional. And it was the duty of Parliament to make sure that the new act simultaneously complies with all of the rights and guarantees within the Constitution, which it dismally failed in.
Gareth, Prince Rastafari, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate it. And of course, very strong views coming up on this. You with SAFM, 17 minutes after 8.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing Storms River, free-falling over Plet, having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30, repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
TS Galaxy Queens and Richmond United ladies both love it in the top half. They want to go as high as possible but not willing to share any points. This is the Hollywood Men's Super League. Catch them Zanti Queens of the beautiful game. TS Galaxy Queens FC tackles Richmond United Ladies FC on Sunday 9 June at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Takataya on the line from Cape Town. Takataya, hi. The issue of coalitions. Good morning. What do you think is going to happen?
Good morning, Stephen. Stephen, you see me, I'm not happy now when I hear that COSATU and SACP, they are going to go to that NEC of ANC, trying to exclude the coalition of DA and ANC. Stephen, we are not enforcing anyone to choose anyone from these parties, but it is the voters who voted these parties to reach those percentages. So if you're going to come and say Party A mustn't coalition with Party B, I mean, that is not even constitutional. So I want to advise the COSATU and SACP to stick into the industrial actions and make sure that the labourers are happy there. They must not intervene in this thing or interfere. You get me, Stephen?
Yeah, I think so. So what you're saying is that the ANC must be allowed to make its own decision.
No, man, Stephen. You see, it is us, we voters, who voted these parties. So if ANC chooses to coalition with the EFF, MK, nobody must interfere in that.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so they must be left alone, yeah.
So what is important is about the people of South Africa, what they want to get.
Yeah.
Services. We don't want politics in this case. Thank you, Stevie.
All right, Takatayo, thank you. In Cape Town. Let's go to Maputle and Tswane. Maputle, hi. The weather in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, it's been terrible.
Yes, Stephen, Class the IEC, Grootes. Morning.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
each time I call you, I'm going to give you a nickname.
All right. Thank you.
Just a statement. Election is theater for the masses.
Yeah.
That's why you see people are up and about doing theatrics. I don't know where everything's going to end. But let me get to my topic, Stephen. You see, this weather that has been ravaging the Eastern Cape and KZN is what you call weather modification.
Oh, Maputle.
Just listen to me, please. I know your scientists, they will come here and refute what I'm saying. But allow me just to have my say. To say, I've been saying to you, the government of this world are capable of modifying the weather. If you look at what happened in Dubai.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. So in some places they do cloud seeding, and there's no link between the cloud seeding and the flooding that happened in Dubai. It's just not there, Maputle.
But these tornadoes that occurred in the Eastern Cape, you know, you got the one gentleman in the U.S. who has patented a tornado and hurricane machine. You can Google it now.
That doesn't mean that it's true, Maputle.
No, it's true. I mean, every time this weather is happening, let me tell you the reason why they want to decimate, especially KZN. They want to remove the people so that they can, introduce a smart city.
All right, Maputle. Sorry, Maputle, you're done. Okay, I have to call it at some point, and this is where we are. I'm sorry, but science is science. We're going to stick to that. 22 after 8.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
Well, of course, we're going to return to the issue of spam calls. We've had so many issues with spam calls. I was making the point earlier that I've got to the point where I want my phone back. We've seen the information regulator. You've heard from the person in charge of the information regulator, Pansi Tlakula, over the last couple of months, trying to deal with all of this. Political parties, it seems, still were using spam calls during the election. Jan Vermeulen's the editor at My Broadband. Jan, good morning. Jan, hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry about that. We've got some construction happening in the office today.
Right. So there's been some developments in all of this, and there's a big conversation around whether or not the law actually applied to spam calls. It seems that it does. Is this now going to finally result in proper action being taken?
Here's hoping. So the reason the information regulator hasn't done anything is because there was this uncertainty whether Popia treated phone calls differently from messages. And essentially people could kind of spam you and ask for forgiveness. But the regulator quite rightly points out that it's always been the case that if you ask to be removed from the list, they should remove you from the list. And that's not been happening, and those are some of the sort of low-hanging fruit that they're going after now, is complaints of people continuously being harassed, even after they've said, hey, remove me from your spam call list.
So, I mean, why doesn't that mechanism work? And that mechanism doesn't work for one simple reason, that the operators who are supposed to do it, the spammers, don't do it. And they don't do it because then they wouldn't have any customers. So, I mean, that's really the issue. They just aren't complying with the law.
Exactly, and because there was really little repercussion, then add to that the uncertainty over whether Popia applied to direct marketing calls. These guys had carte blanche, but now the noose is already tightening around one operator's neck, and hopefully after one example is made, other people will kind of take a look at the risk reward and say, okay, no, we need to comply now, because otherwise, I mean, the information regulator process takes long, but if you don't comply, you're talking millions of rands of fines, which for a small company, these kind of contractors that companies use to do their direct marketing for them, and they all do it, from the financial services providers to the mobile network operators. And those small companies, if they get slapped with a multi-million rand fine, they're dead. The bigger companies, they might not feel it, but the small ones definitely would.
What I've never really understood is that people will often say, I'm calling on this company, right? And you would think that someone with the time and the energy, so not me, would then go and track down the CEO of the company that's offering the service and do the same to them. Just ruin their life, just take their phone away from them, basically. And yet that doesn't seem to happen. And I wonder if they found a way to protect themselves that the rest of us could learn from. I wonder if someone's found a way to, maybe they use anonymous numbers or something. I have no idea. But I just wonder if maybe they've figured out the system better than we have.
Well, most of the high flyers that I've spoken to, they're very circumspect about how they hand out the actual phone number. They use different phone numbers in public records. And then, of course, there's all kinds of tools you can use with varying levels of legality potentially. So like Truecaller. So there's some concern that Truecaller itself might be violating Popia, but I mean, what are you going to do in South Africa? So that's one option. And then there's the spam opt-out list that's handled by the Direct Marketing Association, which is somewhat effective. But now if you put your primary phone number in that list gets given to everybody with an incentive to spam in the country to check against so that you can be removed from it. So there's room for abuse there too. So the trick is to try and make sure your number never gets out there.
Too late now. Do you think that one day we might just have some sort of huge reaction to this that is going to make people stop doing it? People are going to publish lists of, companies they've been spammed by, things like that. They're going to try and basically do all of this, in response to what we're seeing.
Yeah, we've if it gets to that kind of breaking point, we saw that happening with email spam. So the ISP Association, this must have been 15 years ago now, launched a spam hall of shame where they would list every single operator who was allowing spam on their networks, and people, and also individuals who were spamming. And so they would actually name and shame people who were either enabling spam or sending spam over the internet in South Africa. That landed them in hot water, and so they eventually stopped doing it. But that is certainly something that an enterprising organization with a bit of money for legal action can do to try and make a statement about this and get some good press along the way.
Jan Vermeulen, thank you, editor at mybroadband.co.za. Do appreciate it. 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Kanan Moody's talking about the Bulls.
Yeah, they're gearing up for the URC, the United Rugby Championship quarterfinals, with some high tempo and determinations. But he knows they will have to dig deep when they take on the unpredictable Italian side Benetton. And that's all happening at Loftus, Pretoria, come Saturday. Now, the Pretoria side are looking for their second win over the Italians after a 56-35 victory in May. But they know there will be tough opposition this time. Let's hear from Kanan Moody.
The type of game it was, we had to dig deep in certain facets where we were under constant pressure from them on their attack and we had to defend. And I think that in knockoff stages is crucial. So I think for us, being in that position and obviously fighting for every bit and working hard for each other on defense, that's going to happen in tight games and like playoffs, if there's going to be mistakes, but you just have to work hard for each other.
Women's soccer, JVW centre-back Nomatema Nsibande says she anticipates a physical game when they face off with the University of Pretoria. The Hollywood Bet Super League returns to action this weekend from the international break, with the Bedford View side expected to visit Amatuks at the Pretoria University Stadium. JVW will be looking to maintain their winning momentum against a wounded Amatak side who lost 8-0 against Mamelodi Sundowns in their last match. Nsibande says they have prepared thoroughly for this game.
Sunday is going to be a very difficult game. I think we are anticipating a physical game against Tuks, which is always the case. They're a very tough side to play against, and I don't think it'll be any different on Sunday. But we are preparing very well for them, and we want to make sure that, again, it does not become a game where we maybe play well and don't convert and end up dropping points. So we are trying to check and tick all the boxes, and I believe that on Sunday we will be ready and we will make sure that we collect all maximum points.
That's JVW centre-back Nomathemba Nsibande on Sunrise. Cricket action. It was Marcus Stoinis who delivered an all-round performance to lead Australia to a 39-run victory over Oman in their T20 World Cup. Stoinis blasted an unbeaten 67 of 36 balls, lifting Australia to 164 for 5. His innings included 6 sixes and 2 fours, helping recover from 50 for 3. Now later, Stoinis took 3 wickets for 19 runs, restricting Oman to 125 for 9. David Warner contributed 56, becoming Australia's top run scorer in T20 internationals. In the meantime, Uganda celebrated a historic moment at the T20 World Cup with their first ever win, securing a 3-wicket victory over Papua New Guinea. Despite a shaky start at 26 for 5, it was Riazat Ali Shah's innings of 33 that led them to chase down Papua New Guinea's total of 77 in 18.2 overs. That's a wrap of your sport. We'll have more sport on SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thank you. The way the sport of cricket, the game of cricket, is changing. That's next. You're with SAFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, lobby group AfriForum says a significant step has been taken towards privately prosecuting ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula on charges of corruption during his tenure as Minister of Sports. The ANC will hold its crucial Special National Executive Committee meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, later this morning to discuss various options to constitute government within the next 2 weeks. And City of Cape Town authorities say 180 dwellings have been flooded in Nomzamo Strand. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Joburg Gen 3, very heavy this morning. It's all to do really with the closure of Marlborough Drive through Marlborough Gardens because of protesting. Motorists avoiding that and just sitting on the N3 through to Buccleuch interchange, all that sort of Sandton traffic staying on the highway. It means big traffic from Galulis right through to Buccleuch interchange. Crash on Witkoppen and Leslie. If you're coming out of Four Ways, that route remains really busy. And then you've got Witkoppen and Main, the traffic light's still down there as well. Durban North seeing some real traffic pressure, and it probably will do for some time this morning. The M2 closure from Queen Nandi to Kumashu due to a cash and transit heist likely to stay closed for some time. They always do. There's a lot of investigation and forensic that needs to go on there. So there's big traffic on the highway from Umgeni Road just up to Queen Nandi Drive where you're taken off, and then routes like Umgeni Road through Springfield, the Nanda Road through Sikau Lake, Mshlanga Rocks Drive through Durban North, the M4 over Blue Lagoon towards Mshlanga, Masabalali Yangwa, even Dumasile Mkaya out towards the Khayelitsha side, out towards the Kumashu side is heavy with diverting traffic off the highway and then up towards Duff's Road. So a lot of traffic around Durban North. If you need flight connections and you're travelling up from Durban, make sure you got plenty of time. Quickest route, as far as I see it, is Chris Hani, Connell Bridge off Umgeni Road, and then straight up Chris Hani to rejoin the N2. Durban's M4 inbound stays heavy. It will do at peak morning times because the closure of the highway up at Brook Street until about the 21st of this month. Cape Town stays busy, particularly the N1 highway. A crash just after Yipta Yaga on Plattekloof Hill, slowing traffic in from Belleville. Once you get past that, it stays heavy all the way through to city centre. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Progress. It's the essence of Audi. Always pushing boundaries, exceeding expectations.
Imagine extending the same progress to your Audi ownership. Now, extend your cover up to 15 years or 300,000 kilometers with the Audi Freeway Plan extension. Keep moving forward with peace of mind and enjoy your Audi for longer. Experience value beyond tomorrow with an Audi Freeway Plan extension. Visit audi.co.za or your nearest dealer for more information.
The clock is on a downhill towards the world's most prestigious games, with a wide variety of exhilarating action such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, football, and many more. The 6th of June marks 50 days to the Olympics. The world's elite athletes are all eyeing a podium finish. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
26 minutes now to 9 the time. Good morning, time for your mediated conversation this Thursday morning. So one of the biggest sports, one of the most watched sports in our country is the game of cricket. And at the moment, the Proteas are playing in the T20 World Cup, which is underway in the West Indies and the United States. It's part of a much bigger campaign. In the US, there's now a plan to start a major T20 league. The people who run this league are hoping that maybe one day cricket will displace baseball as the summer sport in the United States. In the past, baseball's been the biggest sport there. Now it seems to be losing its grip on the national imagination. Meanwhile, this year's IPL in India again seeing record crowds and a very large number of sixes. So how is the game of cricket changing, and what is happening to Test cricket that seems to be falling by the wayside? First this morning, you'll hear from Firdaus Munda. She is at ESPN Cricinfo Southern Africa. Then you'll hear from Kelvin Watt. He's the managing director at Nielsen Sports Africa, and Aslam Kort is a cricket commentator and a sports documentary producer for SuperSport TV. You'll know Aslam's voice very well. We start then with, from ESPN Cricinfo Southern Africa, Firdaus Munda. Firdaus, good morning and thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Nice to be on.
Firstly, I presume hosting the T20 Cricket World Cup in the West Indies, but particularly the United States, is deliberate. It's about trying to encourage or help the development of cricket in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a strategic move from the ICC, who have identified the US as their biggest growth market. Africa is the second biggest growth market. And I just think we need to qualify that a little bit, because it's not necessarily that they want to tap into the American population as a whole. It's a specific group of people, and it's mostly the very large number of expats from the subcontinent who are living in the United States. And those are, if you look at the faces and the names of the people who are playing for countries like the USA and Canada, those are the people that are mostly involved in the game. Of course, it makes sense. There's cultural relativity there. You know, they see a lot in cricket that they want to do, and unfortunately the opportunities were very scant up until probably a couple of years ago. So that's the community that's developing the game. I suppose the success will come when we see what I want to call indigenous Americans, but of course there isn't such a thing. I guess Americans who are not subcontinent expats also participating in the game. And, you know, at the moment they're building a team made up of people who come from the West Indies. There's some South Africans involved. There are lots of people from the subcontinent, and maybe that's the way it starts.
I realise the world's first international cricket match was played between the United States and Canada, but for years it's been really hard to sell professional cricket in the United States. Now, plenty of people play. I remember speaking to a taxi driver, I think, in the deep south, in Atlanta, actually, who told me there were 2 cricket leagues. This was 25 years ago in that city. What seems to be changing? Clearly there's more money available and more people interested in the game.
Yeah, definitely, both those things. And I think that the big shift has come because there are IPL owners who own teams in the Major League Cricket. So that is the US's version of the IPL. It's a 16 tournament, very much like the SA20. Not all the teams are owned by IPL owners, but there are at least 3. And once you get that kind of money involved and that injection of interest and cash and marketing and just everything that the IPL brings to a tournament, then I think you kind of start a juggernaut that just can't be stopped. And I think that's really what's changed, is they've announced huge plans. The Major League aims to expand to 10 teams by 2027. They get more games every season. And in fact, probably the biggest news is that they've signed Australia's Test and ODI captain Pat Cummins on a 4-year deal, So he's committed to playing for the San Francisco Unicorns, I think they're called, for the next 4 years. And that will include a period of time in which Australia are due to tour West Indies for an all-format tour. And I suspect he will miss that tour because the money is just so good in T20 leagues. And he's also, it was very interesting to me when I read the statement because he identified it not just as a cricketing opportunity, but as a future life opportunity. He said going to Silicon Valley will be great for my cricket career, for my family, and for life beyond cricket. And so I think they're selling the American dream to cricketers, and, why not?
We've seen cricket, evolve in so many interesting ways, and because it keeps records, and because it's slightly older than some formal sort of professional games now, we can see how it's changed. There was a time when no one ever played a one-day game; it was always the long format. That changed. There was a time when it had sort of professionals and the amateurs were very rich English people who could basically play for fun. Now we've seen in the last sort of 10, 20 years the T20, which now seems to be taking over all forms of cricket. There's no way, and if you ask many Americans know one thing about cricket, that it lasts for 5 days and often ends in a draw. You would never be able to sell cricket, that version. You had to sell T20.
For sure. I think explaining the nuances of Test cricket to a new audience is always going to be a challenge. There's just so much in it that if you're a regular cricket watcher, you don't really think about it. But when people start to ask you questions around like changing the ball after 80 overs or what happens if somebody's made to follow on, for example, you realize that the game is actually quite complicated. And to be fair, not even crowds in established Test countries are very big at the moment. Even India, which is perhaps the most cricket-loving nation that exists, their Test crowds are not huge. Nobody's really got the time to take 5 days off work and go and sit in the sun, and the BCCI doesn't exactly treat the fans very well, and all of that kind of thing. So it was always going to have to be a shorter version of the game. And I remember probably 15 years ago talking about developing cricket in countries, especially African countries, where they were doing it through the ODI game, and still the associates prefer playing ODI cricket because they're able to build an innings, they're able to bowl, at least maybe 2-3 spells. But if you look at some of that associate ODI cricket, and I was at the World Cup qualifiers in Zimbabwe last year, it's not great. Some of it is quite boring, and those middle 30 overs do seem to drag, and you can see why the T20 game is a much more attractive option. And I think, as you say, it's just part of the evolution of the game. Of course, for some older kind of fans of the game, people who have a lot of nostalgia and that sort of thing, it will be sad. But I do think it is just the game evolving. And I think what's been so interesting about this World Cup is that we went from an IPL where scores of 250 were being successfully chased in 20 overs to a tournament where scoring 100 has become really difficult. And yes, the pitches are not great in the US, and we can discuss that. But it's good to see that the game can have both those sides to it.
So, is the 50-over format going to die, do you think? It's just not going to... certainly the Cricket World Cup, as I grew up with it, which was the 50-over format, which we've never won, clearly is going to lose its prestige.
Yeah, look, I hope it doesn't die before 2027, because that's the year that we're co-hosting it with Zimbabwe and Namibia, and I suspect that it will be an amazing tournament. And, Africa hosts, especially South Africa, we're such great hosts. And Zimbabwe are building that stadium at Vic Falls. Namibia are building a stadium in Windhoek. So, yeah, I really hope for us and for them that it lasts until then. But I struggle to see a future for the 50-over game beyond 2031. And I say that because the next 50-over World Cup after our one has been allocated to India and Bangladesh for 2031. And it will have to take place because it's in the ICC's contracting, and I think it will take something very dramatic for that to change and become like a massive T20 World Cup or a big IPL or something like that. So I think that tournament probably will happen. Perhaps by then people would have lost interest. And yes, perhaps by the time we get to 2035, maybe then there isn't a 50-over World Cup. And then, in fact, I don't even think we'll have that much international cricket by then. I think you're going to see leagues that are running almost like, football style, where they run for 6, 7, 8, 9 months of the year, and then maybe we have some type of like tournament competition in the time that's left over. But I think the landscape is, we're in this period now where the tectonic plates are shifting, and it's just not going to be the same.
Firdoz Mundab, thank you. From ESPN Cricinfo, Southern Africa, do appreciate it. 17 minutes to 9 the time. You're with SFM. You'll mediate a conversation around how the game, the sport of cricket is changing, continues. Kelvin Watts is the MD at Nielsen Sports Africa. Kelvin, good morning.
Good morning.
Quite a prediction from Firdaus Munda that international cricket might start to slowly disappear, be replaced by kind of international football-style leagues. I mean, is there going to be a big television audience for that kind of product?
Well, I think there already is. I don't think she's far off the mark. I mean, today players are starting to answer more to their franchises and to their national contracts. They're worth more. So, I think it's definitely something that's on the card. I think your more interesting question was the one before, is whether the 50-over game can survive. And I think there's a lot of debate as to whether cricket can continue to have three formats. Currently, cricket is in a very fortunate situation compared to other sports where it does have three formats that talk to three very different audiences and growth audiences. And I think that the ICC's ability to send the T20 World Cup to America, is because they have these three formats. For them to have sent their 50-over game to America would have been a massive call. And I think, as it's turned out, probably very good that it wasn't the 50-over World Cup, as you say, the World Cup of cricket that's gone there, but a T20 World Cup.
This is all about TV or streaming. I'll come to that in a moment. But do you think at this stage there's really a big TV market for cricket that is played in the United States? And this leads us to another question of where the market that would watch it would actually be.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the United States is a massive country. As spoke, it's got a huge Asian influx over the last 15, 20 years, certainly onto the West Coast. It's had a massive Caribbean influence around its cricket for many, many years. Where that interest still exists. So, look, it's potentially a very big market, and it is a market where there is money around professional sport. I think in a future, we see, more professional teams and franchises and investment in those parts. I think you're going to see the United States playing a more important role. But similarly to football, that's become a big game in the US. Football is still, it's a Western European, African, Asian game more than it is a US game at a professional level, at the big money level. So, I think there's still some time way off, and it'll always be an important market, but I don't believe it's going to be the sort of market to take over from the Asian markets, and specifically India and the UK and Australia.
If you grew up watching cricket, you learnt a lot about time differences at quite a young age. If you want to watch cricket in Australia, you have to get up early. If you want to watch cricket in India, it starts while you're at work. In the United States, it's kind of outside of what I would call the time zone of cricket, or almost all of them. Is that going to be a problem? Because one of the things that you can get with cricket is that, in South Africa, you can watch the IPL when you get home. So in other words, it gets two audiences. Cricket in the United States might not get that. Could that be a limiting factor just because of the time zone?
Yes, the time zone, certainly for international rights, etc., will be a limiting factor. But I think the one thing that we've seen in pretty much all sport, the United States is a commercial ecosystem of its own. You either make it in the United States or you don't. The United States doesn't operate because of other broadcast rights and revenues from outside of the US. So cricket will live and die by its success in the US in the end, is my view.
I imagine there's a huge amount of money that could be made here. If cricket cracks the United States, baseball will try and fight back, I'm sure. They would know their market very well. But surely the amount of money that's on offer here is huge.
I don't really think that baseball's seeing this as much of a threat, to be honest. I don't think it is a threat to baseball. I think the market that is being chased, that's what I said, is not necessarily a traditional US market, but very much the expat market. English, Australian, South Africans, they've said they're a big part of the cricket scene there, on top of that sort of Asian and West Indian influence that already exists. And to be fair, in the US, there's enough people in that market to build a really nice sized business. I think even as football's learnt, you don't walk into the US and take over the market from a sporting perspective. It's a really, really tough market to crack. It has dynamics that are very unique to how it operates commercially, from a fan perspective, from a broadcast perspective. So I think the discussion about cricket cracking and taking away market share from any of the big US sports is so far in the future. It's really just too far to even contemplate.
And if cricket does all of this in the United States and builds a nice sized business, I would imagine the Americans will also bring innovations to cricket. And what I'm trying to get to is America could change cricket too. Just like, other countries have from time to time changed cricket. The game of cricket could be changed by going to America. The whole game would change.
I think you may see that, but I think, again, it's similar to the football. So football hasn't changed because of the US, role into the game. And I think the cricket world is still a big world. India's a massive force. Pakistan is a serious market, Sri Lanka, the Asian countries, Australia, UK. I don't see that being too dramatic and too much influence. There may be, from a sort of commercial marketing perspective, there may be some learnings. But again, the ecosystem of US cricket, to take learnings commercially from US and try and apply them in other markets just don't work. And I think the world of the business of sport has understood that the US business of sport is a completely different industry. And there's things that you can learn and operate, but really, I think it works very, very differently.
Kelvin Watt, thank you. Managing Director at Nielsen Sports South Africa. Do appreciate it. You're with SAFM. In a moment, you'll hear from Aslam Coda, 12 minutes to 9.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Two big stories today. One is Durban's cash in transit heist on the N2 North near Queen Nandi Drive. The highway closed. You may find yourself being directed off at Queen Nandi. You may find yourself being taken off at Umgeni Road. So just a heads up about that. Either way, it's causing absolute mayhem and significant congestion. The N2 is queuing heavily up to Queen Nandi. There's a big backlog coming off at Umgeni Road through Springfield Park towards Connaught Bridge. Sikau Lakes in Nanda Road's heavy. The M4, the Ruthurst Highway, solidly jammed up over Blue Lagoon as an alternative route through to Umhlanga, Musabala Yengo, Umhlanga Rocks Drive. Those routes out of Durban up through Durban North towards Umhlanga, very heavy, and Dumasani Mkaya up through Komashi towards Duffs Road, very heavy backlogs as well. It is going to run for some time. If you need to get out of Durban to the north for flight connections, or you need to get up to Mpangeni, Richards Bay or Belito or Kwalakusa, make sure you've got plenty of time because the traffic is pretty thick and pretty heavy. Durban's M4 inbound, worth a mention as well, still queuing up this time of morning. It will do with the closure of the top end of the M4, Brook Street into the CBD, that closure there until about 21st of this month. The other big story is the protesting over electricity supplies in Marlborough Gardens. The road blocked again this morning with burning tyres. Big traffic impact on the N3 North. Traffic sitting from Giloolis right through to Buccleuch interchanges. Motorists loop around that Marlborough Drive closure and head up to M1 South connections. And just while we're here, I just want to remind you, time is ticking, isn't it? It's already time for Comrades. It's on this weekend. It's the Uprun, Durban to Pietermaritzburg. If you're driving KZN this weekend, on Sunday, extensive road closures. Nothing too different. It's a normal route, but it'll be the Uprun, so the closures will lift on the Durban side earlier in the day, and they'll stay later in the day around the Linfield Park, Ashburton, Pietermaritzburg side. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
10 minutes to 9. Continue your mediated conversation this morning on SAFM about the sport, the game of cricket. Aslam Coda is a cricket commentator and a sports documentary producer for Supersport TV. Aslam, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good to be on your show.
Let me confess to you that I much prefer Test cricket. I find T20 really quite boring. Is Test cricket going to die?
Yeah, I heard you asking questions to both our previous guests. I must say that the ICC have been looking to give cricket, all three formats, some kind of context. And by introducing the World Test Championships, it's obviously looked to do that. And so far, I think it has maybe just embedded itself once again as the major sport in all of the three formats. So that's the one answer I can give you. But the thing with that is it only focuses on the top 8 or 10 nations that play Test cricket, and the rest of them are left by the wayside. So these abbreviated tournaments, the white ball tournaments, do give other nations a chance. It does allow the game then to spread across the entire planet. And that's exactly what they're doing, and this is why they've literally forced themselves to try and get this tournament going in the United States, because they're also looking to see if it does happen to be successful. And I'm sure that will be that once the tournament is complete. Remember, they're also looking to add this into the Olympics, and that is the ICC's intention. So there's so much of work at play. I do believe that all three formats will still be around, because as much as we feel that the 50-over format is as Firdaus mentioned, maybe not the most popular of the three, the ICC bank on it, so much so that they've reintroduced the Champions Trophy. And it's all because of the money that it generates. And the ICC say that it's important to have this simply because it allows the funds to come in and allows them to then spread the money with the game to different parts of the world.
Aslam, I'm just going to ask you if you can to move around to improve the signal on your cell phone. Sorry about that. The question then comes, are people still going to watch a long-form game, even a one-day game or a 5-day game? Or do they just not have a market? And I think, for some people, you don't always go to a test match to watch every ball. You often go to a test match for everything else that happens on the side. The refreshments or the people that you go with, or to take the kids because it's 5 days of peace and quiet while they go and play their own game round the back or whatever it is. The very nature of a 5-day cricket match is something particularly unique. It's really a festival with a cricket match happening in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely right. And at the same time, the important thing from a test match point of view, Stephen, is that the senior nations that are involved still manage to get crowds in. It does depend who's playing against who. India, Pakistan, Australia, the West Indies, or Australia and England, of course, and then bring in New Zealand versus Australia, it still generates interest. So, and I'm quite certain that as far as the ICC are concerned, they're going to do everything they can to try and keep that format going. And you are right about the fact that it's a region, and you're not going to go there for all 5 days, but try to pick up the most important parts of the test. The first, what you how the game has evolved through the advent of 50-over cricket or 60-over cricket as it was in 75 and 79 in the initial two tournaments, the World Cup tournaments, and another introduction.
Aslam, I'm sorry, we're really battling to hear. We're going to try and call you back because it's just the line, unfortunately, so bad there. I'm not entirely sure why. Sorry that we're having these problems today. I know, very frustrating, but to just try and hear from Aslam Coda because it is an important conversation that we're having, and also, of course, bringing an end to the conversation that we're having around cricket and the way in which cricket is developing and changing. There's kind of so much to it, but it's also a comment about our society, one way or another. So just looking at that as well, just trying to get Aslam Coda on the line for us, just trying to sort of improve the reception that we have and try and hear from him on this particular subject. So yeah, it's a very interesting subject in a way because I think so many people have grown up with cricket in different ways, and that's what makes it sort of so interesting, is that it's sort of part of our daily life in a very interesting way, and that's what makes it kind of interesting. So we hear from Aslam Coda just to finish off your mediated conversation this morning, and then just to hear from him about this issue of how cricket is in fact changing. As we know, there he is now. Aslam Coda, sorry about that, we've got you back now. The other issue is that if you end up with a T20 type of cricket match on your TV every day, don't people lose their hunger for it? So T20, yes, it's sort of taken over the world, but I wonder if we may find that actually over time it's better to have less of it than the amount we have at the moment.
Absolutely true. It's a point I remember making recently when the IPL was on, and it goes on for a whole 2 months. And you just ask yourself that question that, do you have the time to watch the cricket all the time? There's just too much of cricket because apart from that, as South Africans, we've now seen the SA20 take off in such a positive way. And we've seen it happen in other parts of the world as well. And all of it is now, dominating television screens with the abbreviated format. And I just think that it's just too much to absorb all the time. It's actually very difficult, even from a commentary point of view, because you need to be on the money with everything that's going on around the world, and it just becomes too much to handle. So I do believe that too much of it is also not good.
Is T20 also changing the way that people play cricket? In other words, does it have an impact on the way people play Test cricket or 50-over cricket? So at the moment, it seems batters are able to hit sixes basically whenever they want to, and they always want to, so they're always hitting sixes. At some point, I would think bowlers might bring that back a little bit, and it may depend on the pitch. What I'm trying to get to is the type of cricket that is being played is changing.
Well, that was the point I was making when, unfortunately, the reception went bad. That the advent of the two abbreviated formats has actually improved Test cricket, because what we've seen now are less matches that are drawn in Test match cricket, and we're seeing the whole style of play completely different to what we've seen before in years gone by. Teams in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even in the 80s, used to score at 2 and 2.5 runs and over. Now what you're seeing in Test cricket is there's a minimum of 3.5 to 4 runs being scored, and there's this whole advent of baseball in order to try and just make sure that the format actually stays relevant. And I do believe that inadvertently what's happening, and it's possibly, it is from a positive point of view, Stephen, is that because of the nature of the game and how it's played, that it's been rather positive for the two other formats, the 50-over format and Test match cricket.
Clearly cricket's changing. Do you think cricket through all of this will still be with us in 100 years? I mean, football survived a long time. Rugby, quite a strange sport to survive a long time, has also survived. Do you think cricket still has a lot of durability?
It certainly has, because, and I think Firdaus mentioned it earlier, when you look at the amount of expats that are around the world, the fact that the subcontinent is so full of it. So yes, it still will, I reckon it will still be there. It will just be a part of this whole razzmatazz that's going on. And I do see that eventually what will happen in time is that the T20 type of a format will dominate world cricket.
Aslam Coda, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Cricket commentator and a sports documentary producer for Supersport TV. My thanks also to Kelvin Watt, the head of Nielsen in Africa, and Firdaus Moondas, sports reporter and broadcaster at ESPN Cricinfo Southern Africa. Just interesting to hear how the game of cricket is changing. Well, it's going to be another busy day. The ANC is meeting today, we understand, so we do expect quite a lot more news today. The coalitions issue still going to be a major issue over the next couple of weeks, I think, even after next week's deadline. Let's just see how it all plays out. And there'll be lots of different strong views around what's going to happen in coalitions as well, I fully expect. Thank you for being with us today. Looking forward to tomorrow when it's Friday. Kathy is coming up next. We will see you tomorrow. From Zelma, Melissa, Mdu, Stanza, and myself, look after yourself. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, strides by AfriForum to prosecute Mbalula, and Israeli military strike in Gaza kills at least 20 people. Good morning. Lobby group AfriForum says a significant step has been taken towards privately prosecuting ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula on charges of corruption during his tenure as Minister of Sports. AfriForum's private prosecution unit says it's now in possession of Mbalula's case docket related to his family holiday to Dubai in 2016. Last year, the NPA decided not to prosecute Mbalula on the matter due to lack of evidence to allegations of criminal activity regarding the payment for the trip. Barry Bateman is AfriForum's spokesperson.
They accepted Mbalula's version that the money that he got from Sedgars, which at the time was a technical supplier, it supplied clothes to SACP, the money that he had got from them was a loan. On the aspect of accepting the loan, that is a form of gratification. We know this because we just got to look at what happened in court yesterday in the matter of Mr. Zizi Kodwa. And his version as well is that it was a loan. Yet the state is pursuing that matter. So with Mr. Mbalula, we've got this is selective prosecution.
Friends of celebrity chef Tembekile Litlape, who was commonly known as the pastry princess, say they are devastated by her murder. Her body was found last Thursday at a partner's house. Her boyfriend Sibusiso Zita appeared in the Randburg Magistrates Court in connection